It is episode 52 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. Lots going on in the LCS as far as playoff races are concerned. We've got a race for first seed with 100 Thieves and TSM. We've got even a race for the 8th seed between 8, 9, and 10 being CLG, FlyQuest, and Golden Guardians. You can insert your CLG lulls wherever. And even Cloud9 and TL are fighting for position as far as who they may face when it comes to playoffs. They still have a chance at the bye.
Andy G.
All this to say that there's a lot of stuff going on with the LCS and still a lot to be figured out, even though there's just 1 week of the LCS regular season left in summer. JNT, what are your thoughts on? I know we talked a little bit about it last week, but the 8-team format looking pretty good for this year, or at least things are interesting, right?
Hey, you forgot about EG, dude. EG's right there with Cloud9TL.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Whoopsie.
No, but the 8-team format actually, while I still think that if it was me personally, I wouldn't run the 8-team format. What I do think makes it a little bit more interesting is that there actually is some competition at the bottom end of the league, because normally
Yeah.
we do have just teams right at the bottom who are just completely dead weight last, whereas we've actually been seeing some better games out of the bottom teams like Golden Guardians and like FlyQuest. Unfortunately for CLG, I don't think they're gonna make it.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. But the thing is, they still have a chance, which is
Yeah, like
crazy.
they
And
still
you're
can do it.
And you're 100% right. Like, I don't know why I forgot EG. I guess there's just too many teams to name, honestly,
Pretty
because
much
I
every team.
think even Immortals has a chance of jumping up a spot or maybe losing their spot. I don't know. They have a chance of jumping up a
Yeah.
spot on Dig. And so Dig, like, even Dig matters. So, anyways, I should have literally just listed all 10 teams because they're actually still all interesting somehow. But there are still people that really don't like the 8-team playoff format, and for good reason, because maybe we get to playoffs and we see what we saw last year, right? Where it was just 3-0s, 3-0s, and like it didn't matter and it was boring to watch and so on and so forth. So while I will say that there's no guarantee that the 8-team playoff format will be good in playoffs, it at least makes the end of the regular season interesting, which is great. Just one other thing that I want to touch on for those of you may notice a little bit of a difference in our audio. Just a heads up for the next like month or so, J&T is traveling all over the place. We mentioned this at the end of last week's show, but just wanted to remind you guys that we don't know what our next few weeks or months so of episodes are going to look like. We're going to continue to try to get them out to you guys. We just probably won't be doing live shows because J&T's internet is changing by week to week. So his setup may be changing as well. Just lots of unknown stuff, but we're going to do our best to get you guys all of the episodes. Anything else, J&T, you want to get out of the way, or do you want to get into our topics?
Yeah, we'll just get right into it.
Okay, so yeah, one of the things that was, I think this tweet came out yesterday or the day before, but a lot of people saw on Reddit the AZAEL tweet about negativity and basically saying that he doesn't like how in pro play, I'm paraphrasing here, he doesn't like how in pro play it seems like people are always looking to the negatives rather than the positives, and how games that even if they're still messy can still be entertaining, and that's the one that I've always felt. Any thoughts on that, JNT? I'll pull up the exact quote while you're.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like in terms of like all the negativity surrounding the scene, I do think there is an abundance of it, but I do think that you got to recognize like not even just in the LCS, like League of Legends is like very rarely at a state where games are being played at the highest level or games, the game has been or the meta has been solved per se. The only spots at all where I would say like the meta is been solved or we do have teams playing perfect are in these like high level international tournaments where and even in some cases like that, you can say like teams aren't playing very well. Like you think of not this past World Championships, but the two before, how one-sided they were. And even at MSI, we've seen some fairly one-sided matches and one team just being a clear step above the rest, or another team just making a lot of mistakes. And I think, very rarely do we see League of Legends, like truly at its peak in terms of both teams playing well and there, not being a lot of fiestas per se. So I do find it a little bit surprising that like this is becoming like a topic of conversation now when I feel like you could argue that this has been the case for the majority of years, but people are just now choosing to voice their opinions about it because specifically in this light with AZAEL talking about it, it's LCS related. And I think people can also agree that LCS, this split has kind of been at an all-time low in terms of like overall gameplay from the top teams and even at the bottom teams, because we're seeing a ton of top teams drop games to the bottom teams like CLG Fly, Golden Guardians, and even the middle of the pack teams not looking so hot either. Although, some of them have been looking better, like EG, and you know TSM has been looking better, but 100 Thieves has not been looking so good. Team Liquid hasn't been looking as solid as they were. Even Cloud9, there's still some questions around them. It's just like everything's all over the place, and
Hmm.
it's just like, to me, it's not that much of a surprise, but it's just, being talked about.
Yeah, and I don't I can't speak for AZAEL, but I will say that I think he would actually agree with you in saying that this is stuff that's been going on for a long time. And you mentioned like why is it coming up now? My guess is honestly that he's just finally he's seen too much of it. Like it's something that builds up over time. You know what I'm saying?
The
And
straw
like
that
that
broke the
built up
camel's
frustration
back.
of just seeing time and time. Yeah, exactly. The straw that broke the camel's back. It's something that builds up over time, and then eventually you're just like, look, I'm so sick of it. I've had enough. It could be even like a little instance. You just see a tweet from some random on Twitter and it just pushes you over the edge kind of thing. And I think that's what we're getting here. And I said I would pull up the tweet, so I have it here. I'm just going to read it out. It says, I'm so sick of the prevailing negativity around Pro League. Games do not have to be perfectly played to be entertaining. A poor pick and draft doesn't mean a team can't win. The literal most famous play in League of Legends has neither Shen using ult, and today it's all anyone would talk about. And he's talking, of course, about the Faker versus Ryu, Zed versus Zed outplay. That I mean, I think League of Legends fans have seen 1,000 times, right? But anyway, the point isn't specifically even about that play. I think his bigger point is that it's time to start pointing out some more of the positives. Even though I don't think he would have anything wrong with people pointing out the negatives, I think it's that he sees only the negatives, and that's what's frustrating him. And I would totally agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing that I'm not going to fault it for, but I do think that co-streams kind of does have a lot to play with this, because
Yes.
normally your only outlet to watch LCS or to watch whatever professional league you're viewing, whether it be the LEC, the LPL, the LCK, you go to the main broadcast. And that's how it's pretty much been since its inception. But ever since, co-streaming kind of became a thing, I think there are a lot of positives that come from co-streaming in terms of if you have people who want to maybe get some commentary about the game at a higher level, or, have interest in the various personalities who do the co-streaming, like LS, like Nemesis, like Doublelift, like Sneaky, like Meteos, like I Will Dominate. There's a bunch of really great league personalities who do this kind of content, and I think the scene is better for it. But at the same time, you know, these players themselves who are doing the co-streams do have a higher level and a higher understanding of the game, and so for the most part, they're looking for more of the mistakes rather than, the good play, because to them, good play is obvious, for mistakes are,
Hmm.
kind of the things that you nitpick and what you improve on as a team. And I would think that's exactly how it is behind closed doors in terms of the teams. Like when you see two teams go and play a game, sure, it might be like a really entertaining, fun game. Like I'm trying to think of like some banger game. Like Immortals versus Dignitas, even while like there's like a lot of flame from that game because Immortals giving up like a huge Drake lead and a lead into the game. Like both teams, when the game's over, like they're probably pissed at at
Yes.
themselves, because like, hey, we both played like terror, we both played like shit. This game was completely winnable from either side based off what was going on. So it's kind of just like we're seeing that opinion of like players who are involved with teams and kind of how the process goes. We're actually seeing that now, as opposed to
Yeah,
just only viewing the broadcast.
I think you make two really good points there. The one that pro players aren't that impressed when there's a good play because they're like, okay, that's what should have happened, Like,
Exactly.
yeah. So they're not, but when they see a bad play, it's like that shouldn't happen, and they all know it shouldn't happen. That's probably where they get frustrated, and then they voice their opinions. And the point that you bring up about the co-streams, I think, is totally bang on. And maybe that is the straw that broke the camel's back. Maybe that's why it's coming out now because co-streams or watch party or whatever the hell you want to call them, they're pretty new, right? So maybe that's why all this stuff is coming out now, and maybe that's where all the built-up frustration is coming from. Totally possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also part of like, kind of like you mentioned, like maybe it was just the point where AZAEL was just seeing too many randoms just like spewing garbage on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Because to be
Well,
honest, I think, a lot of people can't really form their own opinions and will sometimes just piggyback onto what they're
yes.
watching from these various co-streams. And it's
Yep.
like, what do you even do from there? Like people are just going to
Mm-hmm.
mindlessly say what they want and follow whomever co-stream they're watching.
Yeah, and another point that kind of falls in the same area is that I think maybe again speculation, but maybe where the frustration is coming from is that it is literally AZAEL's job in like the main broadcast. What they do is they try to hype up these players because we see viewership falling time and time again. And as they're hyping everything up, he looks over to the co-streams and sees them all tearing it down, right? And that's probably another area that contributes to his frustration. I know I would be frustrated if I was part of the main broadcast and you're like, okay, how can we hype up some of these newer players? And a new player comes in and you have Double Lift being like, this guy fucking sucks. Why is this guy even in the league? And you're like, okay, well, damn, right? And again, that's speculation, but that could be part of the problem as well.
Yeah, and the only other thing I really have to say about it, which was like kind of funny, was he brought up the like Faker versus Ryu clip, like pretty much the most iconic play in league history. Everyone should know about that.
Hmm.
If you don't know, why are you even watching this? Go watch that. But like he basically just made the comment like, if that play were to happen in today's league, like everyone would just flame the shit out of the play because, both teams had Shen on their team and neither Shenard.
Hmm.
I don't know. I think it's a bit of like a polarizing statement to use that like specific instance, but I kind of get where he's coming from, using a bit of an extreme example to make his point. But I think his
Yeah,
point is warranted that there is a
me
lot of
too.
negativity, and while I do think some of it can be warranted, I just think the abundance of it and the repetitiveness of it is a little bit tiring.
Hmm. With the repetitiveness of what is specifically?
Well, like I don't know. I'm gonna pick on Yusui because I don't think Yusui's been playing particularly well. But like
Hmm.
any time there's a Dignitas game, like I know Yusui's playing bad, but like I'm not like one of those like randos on Twitter or Reddit who's just actively always talking so much shit about a specific player and just saying this guy's so bad, why is he in LCS, as opposed to actually like trying to critically think and see what he's doing wrong. And I'm using a bit of a weird situation because of the whole Soligo thing, but you know some people just gotta like accept it, and instead just like people will choose to just like harp on something endlessly when that's not needed.
Yeah, and the thing is, you and I know a little bit about this from doing this podcast for the last year that it's like you can't ignore when there's just bad play, right? Like think about how many times you and I have just shit on CLG. And it's not because we want to shit on CLG, it's because like they're bad, right? And so there's not much else to say when you CLG being bad again and again and again and again and again. So and I don't think that AZAEL would be saying like, "Oh, you need to hype up all the bad plays." No, of course that's not what he's saying here, guys. He's just saying that when there's good, you should hype that as much as you hype up the bad. I suppose, I guess, is what he's saying. But
Mm.
yeah. Anyways, yeah, really interesting stuff. I really like where AZAEL is coming from because overall, I think I agree with pretty much everything that he said, despite maybe his example wasn't the greatest example. But I do believe in what he says. And I think it's something that you and I strive for on this podcast. I won't say whether we do a good job or not of that. I'll let our viewers decide whether we do a good job of being positive and negative. But I know that's what we strive to do. And that's why we do like pop off bean soup, right? Every week, we try to have a good thing and a bad thing. And I think that generally, I know that our efforts are pretty good as far as trying to give a fair representation of what there is. But again, I'll let our viewers decide of whether we do a good job of that or not. Anything else on it, or do you want to move on next?
Yeah, next up, we just wanted to give a little update about the teams who are at MSI this past MSI, and kind of
Hmm.
talk a little bit about them because for the most part, all of the major league representatives from MSI haven't been doing the best in their regional leagues, and a lot of the team we've kind of been seeing various stories pop up throughout the entire split that a lot of these teams are feeling super burnt out. We've even seen specific teams like Cloud9 and like Damwon make roster substitutions in an attempt to maybe kind of put some fuel under the fire or shake things up a bit to maybe give some motivating force. And I'll just list it off here because we got Cloud9, LCS. They're in third place right now, tied with EG. We're going to get into it a little bit later, but very close race for playoffs in terms of where they can finish. Mad Lions are also third place in the LEC, tied with Fnatic right now at 10 and 5. We have Damwon in third place as well over in the LCK. They're 9 and 5, I believe. They're 8 and 5, tied with Sandbox. And RNG, our MSI winners, are actually seventh place right now in the LPL. However, in the LPL, I believe the way it works is top 10 teams make playoffs. So they're still in a playoff spot, but
Yeah.
definitely haven't been doing as well as they were at MSI.
So some interesting things to note though that I want to add on to what you just said there. The Cloud9 thing, like they're in third. I don't even think it's a fair representation of exactly what we're talking about because in summer they're not so high. Let me see their record in summer. It's 13 and 11, right? And I just want to remind people that in spring they were 13 and 5. So add on another 6 losses there, like your win percentage is very, very different from spring to summer, which
Yeah,
would
yeah.
suggest burnout as well. And we also saw them kind of shit the bed at MSI, but I mean that's beside. I don't put that on burnout. I put the afterwards of burnout or after
Hmm.
part on burnout. The other thing that I wanted to mention was RNG. Let me pull it up here. So they're 7-5 right now, but I think they were like 1-4 or 1-5 to start.
Yeah,
So
they
like
started out really poorly.
so maybe they're past their burnout. I don't watch a lot of LPL. I will admit that's probably the league that I'm least versed. Not probably, it is the league that I'm least versed in because I put so much time into LCS, LCK, and LEC. But needless to say, like that is just interesting in itself. That maybe they just needed some time. Maybe they were kind of laxed after MSI because they knew they were burnt out, needed a break, and now they're starting to turn it on. Same thing last week. We talked about perks. Towards the end of our episode, we had some lag issues, so I couldn't really speak, but one of the reasons we brought up that perks finally hit challenger is that I specifically wanted to bring up the point that maybe perks was kind of taking it lax because he was burnt out and he realized now's the time I got to ramp up, get some games in, and start picking up some wins in LCS. And so he starts grinding solo queue and he hits challenger. These are all like that's hypothetical, right? But it is still interesting nonetheless, right?
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing was that I think it was Showmaker. Was it Showmaker? Pretty sure it was Showmaker
Hmm.
that came out and there was a post on Reddit in one of his interviews where he was saying like League isn't really like what I want to be doing right now. Like I'm kind of burnt out. And I think the direct quote, I mean it's a translation of course, but it was something along the like MSI blues, saying that like after MSI the team comes out and doesn't perform as well. This team was like Damwon was so good in spring. Like they were hands down the best team in the LCK last split, and now they're what are they? I think they're 7-5,
They're 8-5. I
uh,
just checked.
8-5 now. So they picked up a win, but they're in third place, where again miles ahead of every other team, and it's crazy to see the drop off that these MSI teams have. And I don't really know if there's a good fix to this problem. Like, what is the fix?
Yeah, it's definitely weird because when you do go to these international events, you basically, you shorten your vacation time and then therefore shorten your scrim time going into the next splits, whether or not you shorten your vacation to get more scrims or you take a longer vacation and then as a result end up having less scrims. And we saw that with Cloud9 after MSI basically only starting their scrims the week as LCS started. Like they only had 3 days of scrims before going into the summer season of LCS, and we're supporting a roster change. And we again, like I mentioned, Damwon also made a roster change because they were struggling at one point. Did end up swapping out Ghost, but he is back in the lineup. And while Damwon hasn't necessarily gotten back to form, I think you can look at some of the other teams like Cloud9, like Mad Lions and RNG. Like we mentioned, how they have been getting it together a little bit. I think Mad Lions, they had similar to RNG, not the best start in the split. I think for the majority of the split they've been hovering around 500 record, but are now 10-5. Also like
Hmm.
Cloud9, they kind of been picking up some wins in these last 2 weeks, and most importantly for me, rather than the wins, they've actually been looking pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really, really interesting. The thing is that I would still say is that this is just my personal opinion. I would still say that Mad Lions in spring still look better than Mad Lions in summer.
Oh,
And
for
that's
sure.
a really hard thing to measure though, because like all the teams kind of change as time goes on. So it's hard to compare. But even I've heard lots of interviews with players saying that like they don't really think the LEC is that great this year. And so and maybe it's even fallen off a little bit since spring. And so maybe like Mad Lions is still performing a little bit worse, but they're still up there in record. That's really like that's kind of hard to say honestly, but I think that one thing that we can say for sure is that the teams that were at the top are no longer at the top, and that's what's really interesting about it. And I don't know what the fix would be. I don't think you could just cancel MSI. I think lots of people would be really upset with that because I think MSI's, well, it's the second best event of the year that we have, right next to Worlds. So I don't know what you do about that. You don't really want to cancel the spring split. At least I don't think you do. So it's like there's not really a good fix. I guess you just have to deal with it, and then when summer starts, I guess you just accept that it might become a regular thing that MSI teams start putting in their academy players. Like that's just a norm thing now, and then you kind of fall off to start summer, and then you have to catch up at the end. I don't know what you do about it. It's really, really strange though.
Yeah, I think it's just a balance of like what you want to accomplish because I think you can look back to G2 in season 9 when they absolutely smashed the LEC, won MSI in 2019, but also pretty much didn't take any breaks. And, after the season ended, after World's Finals ended, they really, cited a ton of burnout going into season
Yeah.
10 because they pretty much grinded the entire year. So I feel
Yeah.
like it's kind of like a balance of, well, do we want to just grind the whole year and then maybe be really burnt out for the start of next year? Or, like you kind of said, do you, take a bit of a break before the start of summer split and then, have to play a little bit of catch up and, you know, kind of accept that going to MSI and playing against these other top teams outweighs the poor performances early on.
It's so interesting because last year when MSI was canceled due to COVID, do you remember Cloud9 saying like it would have been so valuable to be able to go to MSI because we missed out on that opportunity to play the international teams? And it's like this year they got that opportunity, but they still have similar, I won't say the same, but similar results to last year where they didn't go to MSI, but they still shit the bed come summertime as well. So like maybe it's not MSI that's the problem, and clearly it's not, right? It's that you're playing so many games from the start of well, I guess it's not even the start of spring split, let's say, since the start of spring split all the way to the end of summer and into worlds. Like that's like a 10-month grind, and like you got to wonder how many of those players have in their careers, right? You mentioned that G2, they did that in season 9, and by the end they were just, drained going into season 10. I saw a significant drop off in G2 from season 10 to season 9. Like season 9, I said this many times, was like no doubt better than season 10 G2. And so you wonder like if that is something that, pull what's the word, holds players back sort of, right? Maybe they only got one of those in their career that like they don't have that in them to grind that much for that long, and I wouldn't even blame them at all if that was the case.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's probably just a mindset thing. Like you're gonna have these guys like G2 at that time, players like Perks, a lot of the top guys in the LPL and the LCK. I want to say players like Doinby, players like Showmaker, who are just like known grinders and like can just do that, and they have no problem
Hmm.
with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a really, really rare thing, but clearly the ones that can do it are the ones that you see come back time and time again, and they make it to Worlds very often, and they perform, and they win their regions very often. So yeah, there is something to said. It's like it's a rare thing to be able to do, but you could see the ones that do it are the ones that continue to win, right? And it's like I'm sure there are so many pro players that strive to do that, but just don't have the mental, the mental to do that and to put that much pressure on yourself to grind for so long. And it's just a really difficult thing to do. And I think that's why we're going to see year over year. I think it's kind of accepted now that after MSI, the representatives are going to come back and look quite weak. It's just something I think we're going to have to get used to. All right, let's get into the LCS stuff because we got 1 week coming up. And rather than do, I mean, maybe we'll look back to this past week a little bit on teams, but I think this week you and I wanted to focus more on the last week of LCS and do more of a preview
Hmm.
because, like I said at the start of the show, we've got playoff races everywhere. Like every single team has something to play for at the moment, which is, I mean, that's kind of crazy. I don't know if it's always been like that or not.
Yeah, normally at
But
this point, like some positions are locked, but I don't
yeah.
think there's a single spot that's actually been locked yet in terms of like a team can make improvements on their seeding. Basically, every team can, and teams that are not in the playoff race, like Golden Guardians and CLG, still have a good chance of making it in.
Yeah, like you said, there's not one team that's locked into their spot. So what we're going to do this week is we're going to focus on their marquee matchup or their make or break matchup that will get them their spot or lose them their spot that they're striving for in the final week. So J&T, I'll go ahead and start us off. It's 100 Thieves TSM question mark?
Yep.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah. Well, as it stands right now, both of these teams are tied for first place. They both have 28 wins. They're 2 wins up on the two next closest teams, which are Cloud9 and EG. So basically, the winner of this match is most likely going to be our number one seed going into playoffs. The main thing to note here is that both of these teams do have a 2-2 head-to-head record.
Hmm.
So, while it's still possible for one of these teams to win this game, and then the other team still managed to surpass them. If, for example, 100 Thieves won against TSM, and then they lost their next 2 games, and TSM won their next 2 games, it would actually be TSM that were to pass them. But more often than not, this is going to be the matchup that probably decides first place. And I think it's pretty much been the top 2 teams almost the entire way for the whole split,
Yep.
because both Cloud9 and Team Liquid did start the season
I would
off
throw EG in there as well. EG's been pretty good too
well,
for
not
this
for the
split
first not for the
specifically.
first 3-4 weeks.
I don't know. They went on a huge win streak eventually. I don't know. I think the record in summer is really good, so I had to throw EG in there.
Well, I just mean like in terms of this is like the known number one and two record
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
wise.
I thought you meant for this split, like which teams have been the best, and I'm just looking at the summer records. Like 100 Thieves is 17-7, TSM is 16-8, and EG is also 16-8. So like 16-8. So that's where like, anyways, I'm sorry, I misunderstood, but go ahead.
Um, what was I saying? Yeah, well, pretty much this is going to be the matchup that decides first place. Most likely,
Yeah,
as I said, there are scenarios where a team can still win, but then the other team surpass them if both teams sort of lose out and win out. But I think it's a very interesting matchup because 100 Thieves have been losing some games recently. I think for the majority of the split, it was kind of viewed that they were going to be untouchable and they were like the guaranteed number one seed. Um, but that's not the case anymore. We actually
yeah.
have a chance for TSM to overtake.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. And like you mentioned just a minute ago, they're 2-2 on the season record, right? So the tiebreaker matters a lot because there's no tiebreaker game. It's just your head-to-head record, as far as you and I understand. That takes the cake. So if they are tied, well, this matchup is going to be the one that pushes them over the edge, and it's the first game of the week. It's game one on Friday, so that's a pretty hype way to start off the week. Now, if we want to get into the matchup specifically, there's been a lot of talk about Spica and Closer being the MVP candidates for this split. Now, for me, I've said this a few times. I think it's definitely Closer in my opinion. I think that he's just been a better jungler, but that doesn't mean Spica's been a bad jungler. And I wonder that if TSM outperforms 100 Thieves, which we think TSM has been better as of late, I wonder if that's enough to push Spica ahead of him in the MVP race. So something to look at there. And then also Abadage, who was absolutely smashing at the start of the split, even 100 Thieves bot lane, who was absolutely smashing at the start of the split, have sort of fallen off. And so I don't have as much confidence in those two lanes as I would have asked me 3 or 4 weeks ago against the TSM counterparts.
Yeah, it's I would definitely agree with you that I think the MVP race at least has kind of gotten a lot closer, at least in the last 2 weeks, no pun intended
Haha.
there. Um, Yeah, I think it's definitely kind of tightened in the last 2 weeks because, like you mentioned, I think Closer and Abadage were probably the two clear favorites based on how hard they were basically smashing the entire league. And FBI Huhi, I think, were quietly behind them, performing very well in the bot lane. But,
Yep.
you know, teams have been catching up to them. And I think what I think is maybe you did mention Spica, and that I think, with TSM's opportunity to pass them, would that maybe give him the nod over the 100 Thieves players? I would also say that Spica is also kind of slumping a little bit, and that,
Yeah.
the other TSM members have actually been stepping it up quite a lot. I think Power of Evil had another pretty decent week. I thought his last 2 weeks in a row have actually been really solid. Sword Art, I think, has been playing a lot better. I've been actually think for the last 2 to 3 weeks now, I've been saying that he's been playing a lot better, and I think he
Hmm.
continues to play very well each week. I think Lost is still solid, and I think, I would call it right now, Hooney, as of late, is TSM's best performing member.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you just said. Sword Art was one player that, like, let's be honest, we were really disappointed with at the start of the year, right? In spring, it was like this was looking really, really bad. And I don't think that he's been a disappointment in summer. Now, look, I guess you could maybe classify him as a disappointment if you were expecting that $6 million player or whatever the money amount is. I don't 6 million over 2 years, whatever it is. I will not say he's been that good, so maybe you still want to call him a disappointment. I'm not there though, just because when I see improvement, I think that that's what you want to see. Is you want to see an incline as you're reaching playoffs and as you're reaching worlds, and we are seeing that. And so
For
I've been
sure.
really happy with Sword Art's play as of late. I've pretty much accepted that we're not going to see that $6 million player a while ago, and maybe we do see it, and I'll be pleasantly surprised. But I just don't think we're going to. And so I mean, I'm not that disappointed with it. I think that he's been good, and I think it's definitely worthy of a shout out.
Mm. Um,
Uh,
I didn't think we're not going to give like actual predictions because we're going to save that for
yeah,
our prediction segment, obviously. But I definitely think, if you take a look at this matchup, I think right now, I would actually prefer, the mid to late game from TSM side right now because I think they have been clutching out a lot of wins in the mid and late game. I still think their early game is the weakness of this team, but I think it hasn't been as much of a problem because both of their solo laners have been playing much better. I think before,
Yeah.
both Power of Evil and Huni in lane were sometimes, and even Sword Art and Lost, were sometimes a bit of a liability in the early game because Huni, while he has been playing much better, still has those moments where he does overextend in the side lane and can get punished. And Power of Evil is just a very slow mid laner in terms of his play style, heavily playing for farm and opting to stay in lane rather than make plays around the map. But I think, the way TSM is playing it out right now, I think they're much more difficult to get leads on in the early game and still have, their very solid mid to late game. So I think if 100 Thieves really wants to win this game and kind of decisively place themselves as the number one seed, I think we're going to have to see a strong early game from 100 Thieves because I think I definitely favor TSM mid late.
Yeah, it's interesting because as of late, like you favor TSM for how they've been playing versus 100 Thieves. But as far as the playstyle concerns, I like 100 Thieves has always been a lot more proactive than TSM, and that's something that I've said many times I value a lot. And so it's like for me, I don't even know who I want to predict for this one yet, but I know it's going to be an interesting matchup, and this game is the one that matters the most to these teams. Um, Last thing I want to talk about with this specifically was you said you watched the episode with Meteos Next Level this past week with Perks, right?
Hmm.
Hello.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't hear it. One thing that they talked about in that episode was they Perks mentioned how 100 Thieves maybe wasn't that good. Medios brought up something about saying like some teams just have a better read on the meta, and so they start splits a lot better. And instantly, Perks hopped on that and said 100 Thieves, like instantly. And so I just thought that was something that was really interesting. That Perks himself is really not sold on 100 Thieves either. He thinks that maybe they just had a really good meta read at the start of the year and that they're not, in fact, as good as people think they are. And that's something that's going to be really interesting going into the last week and going into playoffs. I just thought that was something worth mentioning.
Yeah, just want to quickly make sure you can still hear me all good. I just had to adjust my laptop here.
Yeah, I can hear
Um,
you fine.
okay. Yeah, I definitely do think that 100 Thieves did have a pretty good read on the meta early on. I think they were really the first team that really, I think, made Zinzao like an actual like really good pick. Because I think for the most part, why Zinzao seemed, or I'm gonna assume why Zinzao kind of failed after the rework had come out, and he really didn't see a lot of play at MSI. And even the times that he did see play, in the back end of spring, whether or not it was in like regional leagues or at MSI itself, people were kind of going for this more like high damage squishy build as opposed to this like super tanky gore drinker Sterax build. And we did see that right away with 100 Thieves when they rolled with stuff like the Karma mid lane and they paired it with the Zinzao and really ran over a ton of early games early on in the split. So I do think that there is some sentiment to that statement because when you do find those picks that are considered OP for the majority of the split early on, and not a lot of people are putting a lot of priority towards that, that can be like a winning strategy.
Yeah, and I want to argue the other side because I actually still believe that they are a top team still. Like I don't remember exactly what Perks's wording was, so I hope I'm not misrepresenting, but maybe he was saying that they weren't a top team. Maybe he said they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know. But anyways, I think they're still a top team. One of the reasons why I don't think it was just a good meta read is because we saw like Abadage performing. Remember how he was performing on 3 different styles with so many different picks? That's more than just a meta read. That's like you're performing on a lot of different styles. So that's one. The other thing that I'll say too is that I thought who he was great. Like he was just making really nice plays rather than so much of a like, oh, we have better champions. Like I thought that he was landing hook after hook after hook and landing engage, like on so many different things. That to me is like you're performing well, not just that you have a better draft or whatever it is. So just to play devil's advocate there, I think those 2 players specifically, I point to have being played really, really well versus having a better meta read. As it comes to FBI and closer, I don't really know how to feel about it, and I wonder if Perks is right when it comes to those 2 players.
Yeah. Nonetheless, a super interesting matchup. Unless
Mm-hmm.
you got any more to speak, I think we'll
No,
move
let's
on
go
to.
next.
So our next big matchup that we have is Cloud9 versus EG. Um, yeah, I think this is pretty much the race for third place. Both teams are tied with 26 wins, so 2 behind 100 Thieves and TSM. But the main thing to note here is that EG actually holds the head-to-head record over Cloud9 at 3 wins to 1. So while it's still possible for EG to overcome Cloud9, should C9 win this matchup, in all likelihood, with EG's tough schedule, the winner of this matchup will most likely get third place. And I think it's kind of like You know, of the top teams, it's the ones who have risen the most and the ones who have fallen the most, because I think EG, as you mentioned, has been actually one of the best teams split record-wise. 100 Thieves has 17 wins, TSM and EG have 16, and as of late, EG has actually really been that team that people are really wondering, like, are they actually even a top two team? Are they better than TSM? Are they better than 100 Thieves? I think some people would even argue that EG actually is the best team in the league, and I think specifically against Cloud9, um, earlier on in the split, their play style matched up really, really well because both of these teams were these like super early game focused teams, wants to take skirmishes in lane, wants to take skirmishes around Scuttle Crab early on into the game. And I think that's been, mainly Cloud9's downfall against EG is, they're usually the ones who are willing to make these aggressive plays, but EG is just right there with them step for step and, willing to punish.
Yeah, and it's interesting that so again, the most important game for both of these teams is the one against each other. That's why we're talking about it. What was the other thing that I wanted to add on to is that that's the second game of Friday. So like Friday is starting off with like the top four teams. All of their most important games are right away. So I guess what I'm saying is you don't want to miss Friday. As far as the actual matchup is concerned, I am worried for EG's bot lane, specifically Danny. Um, he had some really good weeks. And then he started playing some mages, and I wasn't that impressed, right? The Syndra, I defended him on because it was just one game. And then I saw him play the Ziggs. I wasn't too impressed with his Ziggs either. And so I'm wondering how much success he's having in scrims with these mages. It's small sample size, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and just say he's bad on mages. But I am worried about it because I think he looks much better when you put him on Samira or Aphelios or some one of just a regular ADC. And the other thing that I'll say is that even though Vulcan was struggling a lot more earlier in the split, I thought Vulcan has started to step up his game. And so that's a bot lane matchup where I actually favor Cloud9 going into it, despite the fact that I think Ignar has still looked very, very good. I give C9 the edge, and I'm nervous for EG that that's going to be a really tough matchup for them.
Yeah, I think the main, like, if you were to ask me about this matchup 2 weeks ago, I think EG are by far the favorites because I think Cloud9 was kind of in a position where they
Mm-hmm.
hadn't necessarily, adapted to what was going on. They were still making these same over-aggressive mistakes at all points into the game. But I think recently with Cloud9, and I think why they've looked so much better and why they've been picking up a lot more wins is because should actually something go wrong in the early game, they've kind of showed this willingness to play for late game scaling and play for wave control and not necessarily take these fights down 1 or 2K early on into the game that would then set them behind 3 or 4K. You can kind of look at the TSM game on Sunday. I'm trying to think of what the other game was. Maybe it was the 100th. I don't remember. There was another game. Oh, it was the other TSM Cloud9 game. Not this past weekend, but like 3 weeks ago, where they went down super early on. That was like the Vulcan's Thresh performance where
Oh
he died level
yes, the
one.
level one.
They
Yep.
got fucked so hard in lane. But basically, Cloud9 kind of put TSM in a position where they had to make these aggressive plays if they wanted to win the game. And Cloud9 kind of utilizing their late game scaling comp. And I think that's been Cloud9 something they've done a lot better this split is like having that patience and recognizing like okay, we're actually in a losing position instead of just like kind of flipping the game and going for these 50-50 plays. Like let's actually just like try to outplay the other teams, and I think they've been doing a really good job of doing so, minus their preemptive TPs into enemy base against TSM.
Yeah, and another thing that's really interesting about this matchup to me is that I think if people said which player has been more coin flip, everyone would point to Jizuke. But I think Perks has been a lot more coin flip than Jizuke this split. At the start of the split, okay, we saw Jizuke running it down a lot. But after, I want to say week two, Jizuke's looked really solid. And yes, he always has an in play every once in a while. But for the most part, he's looked really, really good. And I'm surprised that he is not in the talks for MVP, honestly. I've heard a little bit. I shouldn't say that he's not in the talks, that I don't think there's enough talk about him in the MVP talks because I don't think he's far behind. Whereas Perks, I think, is far behind. Like, no way am I even considering Perks in the MVP voting. I think Perks has looked quite bad, and I'll say it. I said it before. I'll say it again. We know Perks can be good, and we're all just waiting for him to be good. But until we see that, I can't give him the edge in this matchup. I think Jizuke has just been much better. And so even though I give Cloud9 the bot lane advantage, I give EG the mid lane advantage.
Yeah, I definitely think Perks is just playing cocky for the most part. We also kind of saw that in their game against TSM this past weekend, where he's just not like flashing engages. Like he's getting Leona ulted in mid lane. I think
Yeah.
one of the three plays where he got caught out mid lane was, I think, kind of like unavoidable. The one where
The
he had
Huni one?
no, the one where he had used the Zoe hop in and Sword Art Leona ulted his jump back location from Fog of War, and I think that's kind of like there's no way you're getting out of that play because Sword Art had perfectly timed the solar flare down onto him and then kind of combined with the power of Evil Shockwave. But
That
both
play
other
is such a classic, eh? Like the
yeah,
Zoe, like you can't draft Zoe into Leona. I don't know if they did or not. I don't remember how the draft goes. But
they
how
did.
many times have you seen a Leona punish a Zoe ult?
Yeah. But I mean, two of the other three times, like you just gotta flash like the damage that's coming in, like at any time. Like
Hmm. Yeah.
even the first one where he died to that like Huni flash shock blast, he didn't flash the Orianna ult. He decided to like proto belt it like too late and instead decided to not flash, ended up
Yeah.
dying. And I think that was, one of the main reasons why Cloud9 actually lost that game because they pretty much lost control of the entire map for the first 20 minutes of the game in that TSM game because Perks pretty much died three times in a row, two of those three deaths resulting in a dragon for TSM.
Yeah, I think that Perks was the reason that they got held back that game from winning it, and I think Huni was the reason that they actually won that game. And that Huni flash comboed like flash Jace combo for the shock blast was actually really nice.
Hmm.
I couldn't believe that he actually did that. He flashed for his combo and landed that, and that one I'm a little bit more excusable because I think there's a chance that Perks doesn't even know that Jace is there. So that one I was okay with. But to your point, you could flash the shockwave, you could flash the Zoe ult, the other one in lane specifically. Um, yeah. Anyways, he's got to stop holding on to his flash and greeting it because he is costing them some of the plays and ultimately some wins.
Yeah, I mean, the other guy that I'll insert into like MVP conversation is Fudge because,
Yep.
I think again, I think most likely when you look at MVP and the player who specifically wins it, it is going to go to a player on a team who has been one of the top teams during the split, and I think that's a totally fair argument. But at the same time, like you got to look at Fudge from Cloud9 side as a player who has literally been like trying to carry his team over the finish line pretty much in the
Yeah.
majority of their losses. Like I want to say in like five or six Cloud9 losses this split, like you've had games where Fudge is like absolutely 1v9ing a game and like somebody or the rest of the team is just like too far behind. Like he had that Akali game against Immortals. He had a Viego game against somebody else, not this past week, but last week. There's just numerous games you can go and look at
I agree.
Fudge's games, and he's really doing a ton of work for this team. And I don't think he's actually been getting the credit he deserves this split. I think I would still have him as my number one All Pro top for sure. I think with Hooney's recent performances, I'd probably put Hooney second, and then I'd probably have Someday third.
So just I've heard some rumblings about Fudge being in the MVP talk, so I don't want to say it hasn't been there at all. But to your point, I do agree that he should be in the talks as well. And this is kind of off topic, but I'm going to bring it up now before I forget. Is I think Xerxes fits the exact same thing as what you just said about Fudge. I think that he's been very, very good on a team that hasn't looked very, very good. And also, both teams are 13 and 11 this split specifically. Whereas, like a lot of those wins for Immortals, I think Xerxes is the reason for those wins, just like you could say Fudge is the reason for Cloud9. So I think there's some similarities there. I wouldn't mind if people said they thought Fudge was ahead of Xerxes or vice versa. I don't really care, but just a player that I think you could insert into the talks as well. For someone that's performing on a lesser team.
Hmm.
I just didn't want to forget about that.
Would agree.
Specific, pardon me.
Would agree.
Yeah. The other thing that I will say is that I thought Impact struggled more towards the start of the split. He started to pick it up lately. I think it was last week that he was Player of the Week, and so you're looking at a really good top lane matchup as well. If you've got
Hmm.
what we would say is I would still call it an out there but possible MVP in Fudge, and then going up against somebody who's striving a lot as of late, I think that's a really good matchup as well. And that's one where I don't really know who to favor. Although I'd probably favor Fudge in Cloud9, it's still pretty close with how Impact is playing as of late.
I do think that this matchup is most likely going to hinge on mid lane, just due to the fact that Perks and Jizuke are just throughout their careers have been very volatile players. Like
Yeah.
there are going to be kills in this lane, whether it's 1v1, whether it's a jungle gank, or whether it's like some one team deciding to bring four members mid lane. One thing that I think Cloud9 does really well when they're playing at their best form is actually doing a lot of coordinated mid lane dives. Well, they'll actually have Perks, shoving in a wave. Majority of the times they're doing this is when he has a level advantage early on to the game, where they're like he's level 4, enemies level 3, he's level 5, enemies level 4, he's level 6, enemies level 5, and bringing the jungler on one side and the support on the other side, and kind of doing this little like triangle conversion on the mid lane tower. And I think, watch out for that this game, especially if Vulcan is playing some form of Hex Flash Engager, because we do see that play a lot out of Cloud9 if he's playing something like the Alistar or something like the Nautilus, or I'll throw a curveball if he's playing something like the Blitzcrank.
The Blitzcrank, nice.
I feel like that's a
Wouldn't
little
mind.
pocket pick that we could see in this game because both Ignar and Vulcan have played Blitzcrank games. Ignar pretty well known for his Blitzcrank.
Makes me wonder if we'll see it with Tom Kench being played now as well, with it being such a high priority pick as well. It's really good into that. Um, Last thing that I'll say is that we mentioned that this is the most important game for each other. The only thing I will add to that is that I think this win is more important for Cloud9 because they are behind 3-1 in the matchup versus EG. So
Yep.
even like we said, if they're tied by the end of the week, EG is getting the seed. So this game is actually more important for Cloud9, despite the fact that it's very important for both teams.
All right, we'll go on to Team Liquid next, but we're kind of going to stay on the same topic because Team Liquid actually plays both EG and Cloud9. They play EG on Saturday and C9 on Sunday. And the way that it stands is Team Liquid is 1 win behind both of EG and Cloud9 at 25 wins. And funnily enough, they have a 2-2 head-to-head record against both EG and Cloud9. So in all likelihood, um, if they were to beat one of these teams or both of these teams, they actually have a real shot at actually moving up to the number 3 seed. Because I think, the 3 seed is the real big advantage in all these playoff scenarios because that means you're going to play one of Dignitas or Immortals in the first round, as opposed to playing one of the three of EG, Team Liquid, and Cloud9.
Yeah, Team Liquid, I will say they actually have, like you said, with the two matchups that we're talking about there, their two marquee matchups. We couldn't give them one. Is both the C9 and EG, but I'll also throw in that their other game is Immortals, and I know Immortals. I don't think they've been that great, but they just had a 3-0 weekend, and overall they're still positive on the split. Like I mentioned, they're 13 and 11, so this is not a free win either. I don't want to completely discount the other game that they have to play, but they have a tough week ahead of them. And yeah, like the thing is, they can grab the third seed if they show up and perform. My problem with Team Liquid, and I mentioned this a little bit last week, but I'm going to go a little bit more all in on it this week, is that they're very, very predictable. They play through top, and everyone knows they're playing through top. And I don't know if you have to do that as Team Liquid when you have Jensen and Core JJ 2 stars in their other lanes. Now, let's be fair about this. I don't think Core JJ or Jensen, either one, has been playing to the peak that we've seen them in the past. So I want to be fair about that. And I understand that Alfari is probably your best laner in the league right now. So I get why you want to play around him. But where I'm nervous is when you play these top teams, I feel like you can get shut down in one lane if they know you're going to play around that lane, like we saw Cloud9 play against them in the finals in spring. We knew that TL wanted to play around Alfari back in spring. Blabber just lived in the top lane, and they got first blood top lane every single game, as we've mentioned before. So that's where I'm a little bit nervous for Team Liquid.
Yeah, I think the other like kind of elephant in the room to address is like we still have no word out of Santorin. So we did talk about this last week, but I think in all likelihood we're probably going to see Team Liquid roll with Armeo for at least
Yeah.
the start of playoffs. I would honestly probably say that the rest of playoffs, he's probably
Yeah.
going to be the one playing
Yep.
because I really don't see a scenario where you would take out Armeo and put in Santorin, who most likely hasn't been having a lot of practice and who probably hasn't been actually scrimming with the team. Might be involved in the team in some capacity, but probably not playing as much as he usually is.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think I maybe said this last week. I don't know, but I don't see Santorin coming back at this point. Maybe behind the scenes he's been practicing a lot and he's been scrimming, and maybe things are going well for Santorin, and there's a chance he's back in soon.
Yeah.
We haven't heard or seen any of that, and so it's hard to think it's going to happen without hearing or seeing any of that. But yeah, I do think that Armeo is a drop down from Santorin. I know people don't like to say it, and I don't blame them because it's like it's not fair to Armeo. Like he's not supposed to be the starter for this team. He got thrown in towards the end of last split, and so his time with the team is much more limited, considering there was a huge break between for the MSI break, and so his time playing with this team is not nearly of how much it should be for a regular jungler.
Mhm.
Um, with that said, it still doesn't stop me from saying that I don't think Armeo is a top tier jungler, and I do think it hurts TL not having their starter. And it's really unfortunate that we're probably not going to see Santorin. So it's just feels bad, man.
Yeah. If I had to say, I do think that Team Liquid is a little bit more favored against EG than they are against Cloud9, mainly because
Hmm.
I think Cloud9 does have the advantage. I don't know. It's hard to say. I think I would call mid lane even for the most part, just because I don't think either player is at their top level right now. I think you could maybe edge it out in Jensen's favor just due to
We're
perks as like
talking Jensen versus Perks,
yeah, and
just
I'm
to be
talking
clear.
mid
Okay.
lane. Yeah, I
Yep.
think, but I think for the most part, Cloud9 has the advantage everywhere else. That's not top lane, and I think you could argue top lane is an even or even a head matchup for Cloud9 based on the previous results. But I do think the majority of that was because Blabber did kind of camp topside in the
Yeah.
series, in the finals and the like winners finals, which was the series before that.
But,
But
but
I
who's
think
to say they don't do it again, right? Who's
exactly.
to say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you can kind of implement the same game plan, and you could also argue that that game plan might work even better because you do have a lesser jungler in Armeo. But I do think I kind of made this point last week with Team Liquid is that I think they're a bit harder to run over in the early game because that's primarily what EG has been doing to a lot of these teams because their laners for the most part are very, very solid. I don't think they're all at their top level, and I think you look at other top teams like 100 Thieves and TSM who do have very strong laners as well. Um, but specifically Team Liquid, like Alfari and Jensen, like their laning is just so good, and I think it's really hard to
Hmm.
like run over this team in the early game unless you have such great objective control and you're getting these first few drakes. Because similar to TSM, for the most part, I think if you go even into mid late game against Team Liquid, like I'm probably gonna favor Team Liquid as long as their draft is not like completely early game. And from what we've seen, they very rarely draft all early game. They usually opt for some sort of, scaling mid and scaling top laner with like an aggressive bot and jungle pick. So I think I'd probably say that the EG win is probably bigger for Team Liquid, and but they're both very important because of the standings and because of the head-to-head records.
Yeah, no, definitely really important. The way I see these games being played out for pretty much all TL games, the way I see it being played out is at level 3, Alfari's going to have a wave stacked up because he's just better laner than pretty much everyone else. He's going to have the wave where he wants it, and there's going to be a TP to the top lane, and it's all going to be decided on how successful the dive is level 3 in the top lane. It's something that we keep seeing time and time again. Yeah, that's where I see the games being decided. I hope I'm wrong because I don't want to like honestly, it's just not that fun when you know what's going to happen in a game. And that's one of the things that I'm a little bit disappointed with TL, but it's like I also don't really want to blame them. You have Alfari, like he's good. You want to play through Alfari. So I don't know. It's strange. It's like I want to see them do something else and be proactive somewhere else, especially like I mentioned before, when you have Jensen and Core JJ, these are stars in our league. Play through them. Like
Mhm.
I want Jensen back on LeBlanc. That guy's insane at that champion. Put him back on that and play through him.
Yeah, I
But
remember
anyways,
in their post-game interview against Golden Guardians, Alfari was giving the interview, and in this split, I know he hasn't played the full split, but his CSD at 15 minutes is like 27.
yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Man, it's so they build up a wave. It's literally they build up a wave level 3, they dive. Usually the dive has been successful, especially against the garbage teams. I mean, when you've got Alfari versus like Fake God, Finn, uh Revenge I'll throw in there. Uh like you're going to get CS leads when you stack up a wave on these guys and you're just better laning, right? Like that it just happens time and time again when you have that gap difference in top, like you have a significant top gap in skill and then you play around that lane. I'm not surprised at all that Alfari has these kinds of advantages. And in that interview, he's just like, I don't
Yeah,
even
I'm just
remember
better.
exactly what he
He's just like,
said.
I'm just better.
It's true though. He is just better.
Yeah, no, he
He
was like, he
is.
was like, I'm not sure if like the rest of the tops are bad or I'm just better. Like, it is
I
funny.
think the first one. I think they are
I think both
bad.
are true.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm not as confident that they'll be able to do it against teams like Cloud9 or TSM or
Yeah.
whatever. Like I could feel confident that Fudge will be able to handle that. Fudge and Blabber, let's say, or Impact and Svenskeren or contracts, depending. Yeah. Anyways, I don't think that it's going to be as easy against those teams, and that's why, like I said, I'm a little bit afraid for TL. But the last thing I'll say on it is that it's very similar to what we saw with TSM last year. Last year, we knew TSM was going to play around top. Very similar, where level 3 they're going top and doing a dive. we all knew it was going to happen, and you and I were very critical of them for that, and that's why I thought TSM had no chance of winning. And then I had to eat my words later when TSM did exactly just that and smashed FlyQuest and TL in both of their series in the playoffs and ended up winning the split. Needless to say, yeah, they got exposed at Worlds, but still, it can work in this region. Just saying, it can work. But
All
I'll
right,
leave it there.
we got Dignitas up next, our current sixth place seed, but there is a scenario where Immortals can actually overtake them. But I know it's kind of funny. We have their marquee matchup as against CLG, but the main thing to note is here is if Dignitas picks up one win, then it basically forces Immortals to have to 3-0 the weekend in order
Mm-hmm.
to be able to overtake them because Dignitas owns the head-to-head record against Immortals already 3-2. So and Immortals does have a bit of a difficult schedule, so one Dignitas win in all likelihood will probably lock up that sixth place seed, and 6 versus 7 is very, very important because 7th and 8th are auto put into the lower bracket, so you do have that, one free loss when you are seed 6 or above.
Yeah, if Dignitas only picks up one win, Immortals has to go 3-0 to pass them. And so that's why we made the Dignitas versus CLG the marquee matchup or the make or break matchup, because that's a win that you should have. And if you pick up that win, you are very, very likely, probably like 90+% of
Hmm.
picking up that seed ahead of Immortals. So that's why it's like it's a really important matchup,
Even though it's
even though
against
it's
CLG,
like
yeah.
it's against, yeah, yeah, it's against CLG. And the thing is, we just saw Immortals go 3-0, so let's not count out the possibility that it could happen, because it definitely can. It's just, yeah, if you're Dignitas, you need to pick up this win. Now, for Dignitas, I want to talk a little bit about how they've performed as of late, because you and I have been very critical of this team, and I think with fair reasons. But I gotta give some shout outs to where they're playing really well. I thought Yusui had a really good Yasuo or Kindred game, excuse me. Despite the fact that I don't think that game mattered much at all. Like, I don't think that game evolved around mid lane at all. I think they just completely smashed FlyQuest. But the point is, he still popped off on a odd pick. So I'll give him that. And then Acadian was another guy that I've given a lot of criticism to, and he's looked really good as of late as well. And so, even though I still am not ready to put Acadian up as one of the better junglers in the league, I still don't really think he is. I think he's starting to play things that do fit his style, and he's starting to have success with it, which is much different than when we saw when he first came into the split or first came into the team towards the start of the split. His Volibear's been good lately, and his Kane's been good lately. So just got to give shout outs there for Acadian. That this team is not as bad as we thought they were, because we thought that they really fell off after spring.
Yeah, it felt pretty doom and gloom, honestly, when the first mid lane substitution happened from Saligo to Yusui, and then like half a week later, in the middle of the LCS weekend, they swap out Dardoch for Acadian, and Dardoch gets like cut basically at the end of the week, and
Mm,
it felt like there was kind of no hope for this Dignitas roster because they actually, while they didn't go on like a big loss streak, they had I think a period of like 9 games where they went 1-8, and everyone had kind of written off Dignitas as like, well, they're probably still going to make playoffs because they picked up enough wings in spring split, but they basically have no chance. And I think, kind of like you mentioned, like uh, I think I'll give props to Yasui because I don't think he played that terribly this weekend. But I think the
yeah.
main props needs to go to Acadian because he's actually been playing really,
Yes.
really well. I think in the last 3 weeks, he's actually had some really good performances on picks like the Kane, picks like the Volibear as well. And I think he's kind of one of the main faults that we had for Acadian was kind of his like pathing and decision making, where he was only going for ganks, and often when these ganks failed, he ended up falling super far behind. But I think he's doing a lot better with like managing his farming versus ganking, and should ganks fail, actually managing to keep up and farm. But his ganks have been going really well lately, so it's kind of just it's looking a lot better.
Yeah, and I think the criticism was that he was playing so gank heavy that even when he finally got a successful gank, he was so far behind in CS from, like, just losing his jungle, that it didn't matter. Whereas more as of late, he's having so many more successful ganks that he is getting a lead, even if he is falling behind in jungle XP and CS. So that's where the difference is. It's like he's continuing his style, but he's having a lot more success with it, with his ganks. And so that's been a really big part of Dignitas' success. I don't want to overblow their success, because they're still 10 and 14 in summer. They're not like a great team, but the point is they're not as bad. Like, you and I thought that there was a chance they were one of the worst teams in the league, for summer specifically.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, they're just slightly above that, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you definitely need to beat CLG. Although with the power level of these teams, I wouldn't necessarily say CLG is a free win, although I do think they are the freest of wins based off of all the
Yeah.
other teams in the LCS and kind of how they're performing. But if you're Dig, you pick up this win and you're most likely going to hang on to that 6th seed, and that's what's really important here is having that upper bracket spot versus lower bracket.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say on it is that I don't think Fake God has had a really good split,
No,
but
he's
neither
been
has
honestly
Finn.
poo-poo.
Neither has Finn though, right? So
He's
it's
been
like,
even more
Fake
poo-poo.
God, this is your chance, man. Like, this is the time. This is the time to pounce.
Yeah,
Uh,
everyone's soloable is Finn, so you gotta at least like do that. So and then
yeah.
you'll be okay.
Yeah, it is really amazing how much Finn is just hard losing these lanes and games ultimately. But we'll get to CLG in a little bit. Who's next?
All right, we got Immortals up next, and kind of like we mentioned with the whole Dignitas Immortals situation, with Dignitas owning the head-to-head record over Immortals, should Dig pick up that quote-unquote free win against CLG, Immortals will need to 3-0. And while Immortals do have an easier schedule than a lot of the other teams, their main difficult matchup this weekend is against Team Liquid. I believe their other two matches are against Golden Guardians and FlyQuest. Um, I'm pretty sure that's what they are. We'll find out later when we do
We're
our
talking
game
about
prediction.
Immortals. I have
Yeah,
it right now.
their other two games are FlyQuest, Golden Guardians, right?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
And basically to get that 3-0, they're most likely going to have to go through Team Liquid. And
Hmm.
I think this has actually been a pretty interesting matchup for the most part all year because if I'm not mistaken, Immortals is 2-2 head-to-head record with Team Liquid. Is that correct or no?
Let me pull that up.
I think they're 2-2.
Immortals
If not, they're 3-1.
versus TL. Immortals is 1-3 versus TL.
Okay, never really. So the only win they had against Team Liquid was that first game of the season in
I
like
guess
spring
so.
split. I guess. Man, I thought they beat them this split. I guess I had that wrong. But I don't think Immortals has looked really terrible against Team Liquid. But I do think that that's partially been because both of these two games in the summer split, they've been up against Jenkins instead of Alfari. So I think the most difficult part in this matchup for Immortals is going to be top lane because Revenge is probably one of the weakest members on this team, and his
Yeah.
laning, I would argue, is probably his worst aspect of his gameplay. I think he's actually pretty solid when it comes to the mid and late game, and often he's actually playing a late game scaling champion like the Gwen. He's been playing a lot of Gwen, and I think
Yeah.
it
I was
can
just
be
gonna bring that up.
it can be acceptable to go down a tower or a death or like 20 to
Hmm.
30 farm and kind of be relevant in the late game.
Yeah.
But laning has mainly been Revenge's biggest weak point so far in his LCS career, and when the other player that you're laning against is the best laner in the league, and I don't think it's close to be honest.
Hmm.
It can lose you the game.
Yeah, you could straight up lose that game in just laning phase. I completely agree. It's funny that you bring up the Gwen and like in lane stuff because that's exactly what I was going to bring up. I think what you and I would say, and stop me if I'm not representing you correctly here, but I would say that even though he's playing the Gwen and it's fine to lose lane because you know she's going to be a beast later, it's still like he's losing these matchups a little too hard
Yeah.
and being a little too irrelevant later to make up for the bad laning phase. Is what I would say with Revenge.
Yeah.
Another thing of note, since I'm looking at it now, they are 3-2 versus EG this split, so that's something that they have for going for themselves. Like you mentioned, EG's 16-8, so they're winning a lot of games this split. Well, they're three and
They
two
beat
against them on
Cloud9
the
two
year.
times this split, I believe.
They're 3-2 against them on the year, I should say, not the split. So that's something. So something of note. The other thing that I'll say too is that I've been really critical of Race, and he had a good weekend, so I want to give him that. When we were watching his game when he was playing Draven, I will admit I was saying to JNT like I don't have any faith that he's going to hold on to this lead because well, lots of times you give Race gold and then he ends up throwing and dying, and so I've seen it happen many times.
Mhm.
I was I don't know exactly what I said, but something along the lines of like, I won't be surprised when Race dies and they end up throwing the game. He did not. And he continued to get more shutdowns on the Draven. He was kind of beasting in that one game. I don't remember who was against, but was it Team Liquid?
He put well, not
I don't
team.
remember who was
It
against.
can't be Team Liquid because they're about to play Team
Oh,
Liquid.
true. Yeah, who the hell was it?
Well,
It doesn't matter.
he played two Draven games this weekend, but I think your point is
Who did he
basically
flash away from? Remember, there was one fight around Herald or Baron Pit rather.
uh,
Who
He flashed away and flashed
They
in.
were they were playing 100
that
Thieves,
game?
100 Thieves.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it
Yes.
was LeBlanc. He was the LeBlanc had dashed over the wall and he did
Yes.
the Tyler one Draven flash in to three people and then killed them all.
I knew J&T could help me with this. Memory stuff, I just point to J&T and he remembers things. Anyways, yeah, so I need to give him props for that because I thought he actually had a really good weekend. I never want to see him play Ziggs again, but his Draven was actually pretty good that game, so got to give props where it's due.
Yeah, I actually think that bot lane is probably the most interesting matchup for this game, mainly because I had a really high opinion of Tactical and Core JJ early on in the split, and I think they were right up there with Epi Huhi up until the second matchup between Team Liquid and 100 Thieves, where Epi and Huhi just completely destroyed them. And I was like, okay, I can accept that Epi and Huhi are the best because they've been looking really
Yeah.
good. But I
Yeah.
I do think that Team Liquid's bot lane has actually they haven't not that they've been struggling, but they haven't been looking like all that great. Like they've just
I've been less impressed with Core JJ out of lane rather than in lane. He's been getting caught out a lot, and he's not finding those engages like we know. Like you could always rely on Core JJ to find that pick when you're behind in the game, and I don't know if we could feel that way anymore. That's how I used to feel about Core JJ, and I
yeah, but
don't anymore. So
well,
the lane spot specifically, I'm not that worried for Team Liquid. Whereas like out of lane, yeah, I don't. Meh.
Well, I just think that they used to be such a dominant force in lane, and we would often
Yes,
see, like we did see in top lane, we could see games won through bot lane with Team Liquid, and I
true,
think with
true.
them not performing as well and, not finding all these engages that they had been in the past, I think with the race and with, these picks like Draven Nautilus in the bot lane, that's like a really early aggressive lane that should you get one kill 2v2, you can actually like kind of snowball the game through that. And I do think that I wonder if Team Liquid will actually give him the Draven or if they'll ban it out. Because if I was Immortals, the way that my bot lane played this last weekend and the way that the Team Liquid bot lane has been playing, I would happily take like a Draven Nautilus into whatever the hell Team Liquid want to play, like a Leona Varus or a Leona Thresh or an Aphelios Thresh, and just like play with your dick out and like try to actually win.
Nice. Play with your dick out. Okay, I get what you're saying though. Yeah, it is an interesting thought. I would like to see what that matchup looks like. The other thing that I want to say is that Destiny got Player of the Week as well. They had a
Really?
really good week. So another shout out there to the lad Destiny in the bot lane because he had a pretty good weekend as well. So yeah, there's
I didn't know that.
another little area of like, hey, this bot lane is not a free win for TL like you would suspect it is. A little thing there. What's next?
We got Golden Guardians and FlyQuest. We're covering the both of these teams here because FlyQuest right now they're the ones holding on to that eighth seed. They have 12 wins, I believe that's correct.
FlyQuest is 13 and 29. Golden Guardians is 12 and 30. So
Okay.
GGS or GG is GGS is one win behind FlyQuest. And they're both on losing streaks. FlyQuest has lost 5 in a row. I mean, they had won 4 in a row when their academy team got subbed in. Well, now they've kind of gone the other way. They've lost 5 in a row, and then Golden Guardians has lost 4 in a row. They were starting to get hot, and well, both of these teams, I think, yeah, both these teams just went 0-3. This was the first week Golden Guardians went 0-3, man. They were
Satch.
starting to ramp up. This was supposed to be the time of Golden Guardians,
Well, they went
and they
they
took a
went
bit.
2-1 in the previous weekend, so they took an
Yeah,
extra win. They weren't supposed to win that game. They had to go
had to,
1-2 the whole way. So they
had
got
to make up
punished. They
for it.
got punished for winning 2 games.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess
Yeah.
so. But
Um, the other thing to note that I don't, maybe you said this, maybe you didn't, but it's a 2-2 head-to-head record with these teams.
right.
So most likely the winner will probably get that playoff spot over the other team. Although it
Hmm.
does still somewhat favor FlyQuest because they do have that one extra win to start the weekend with. So even if Golden Guardians were to win, own the head-to-head record, FlyQuest could go 2-0, 1-1, and as long as they get one more win than Golden Guardians, they will be the one taking that playoff spot. But kind of like you mentioned, both these teams on pretty big losing streaks as of late. But I
Yeah.
will say that I still think Golden Guardians has been playing well in a lot of these games. I think
Yeah.
their game against Team Liquid was pretty good, actually. I was really impressed with Golden Guardians' willingness to still engage and make plays, and that was something that I credited them for even before the whole Licorice acquisition. Was that even when behind, this team was actually still looking for plays and looking for ways to get back into the game when down 1 to 2K gold, instead of doing your classic like CLG or former Dignitas, like, or even Immortals before they got good, like just absolutely do nothing and just like bleed out, and it's just like a painful game to watch. Like this team actually makes plays, and I think that's why I definitely give them much more of the edge over FlyQuest. Because with both of these teams going on losing streaks, I still think Golden Guardians hasn't been playing bad by any means. I think I've still been impressed with a lot of their games despite the losses.
Yeah, and one thing that I first of all I agree. The one thing that I've noticed with Golden Guardians, and I haven't, maybe they talk about it on main broadcast. I don't know. I don't watch much of main broadcast usually, but something I've noticed is that their comps are a little bit like CLGs in in the bongo comp kind of. They're running a lot of Rel and Diana and just heavy dive like Callista stuff. Lots of things where you could just heavy dive and team fight, and I think that's why they've been so good as of late, or one of the reasons rather. Um, it reminded me, I love that Scooby Doo meme where you take off the mask and it's like it's not CLG, you take off the mask, it's actually Golden Guardians. No one's talking that Golden Guardians is running some bongo comps, and I think that's part of why we've seen them have success. Not lately, but a little bit before lately, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I do
Um,
think they kind of have a little bit like more of a meta twist on it because I think with the CLG kind of like comp, it was like nobody's playing Galio, nobody's playing Vi. So like, what the hell is
yeah,
going
that's
on here?
true.
Like, you're playing these really one-dimensional champions. Where I think Golden Guardians they have a bit of a like new look on it. Where like, yeah,
Yeah.
we're still gonna play this heavy engage style, but we do have these other champions who do offer up a lot of utility. The main thing with Golden Guardians is they're Tom Kench abusers, which I like because,
As long as
dude,
it's not support, right?
dude, that champion is broken OP in solo lanes. It is absolute dog shit trash in support. You pick Tom Kench support. I don't like you.
It look, it has been bad. You're right. I mean,
Has it
it's a
won a
funny
game
way.
yet?
It's a funny way of
I don't
putting
think
it.
it's won a game on support in LCS.
Good question.
I'm
I don't
pretty sure
know.
it has not won a game on support LCS. Somebody can look that up. I can't look it up right now. But I'm pretty sure it has not won a game in LCS, and it's won a game in mid
It's
for sure because
possible.
Blaze Olive won one
Yeah.
game. He had a good performance on it against Team Liquid. Revenge picked up a win on it in
Yeah,
top lane
revenge
this
was on.
weekend.
Yeah.
Dude, that game against 100 Thieves,
It's
he was just like tanking people for days.
it's so stupid. It's so stupid how tanky that champion is. Although I will say I won't be surprised if teams leave it up as long as they are able to pick up the Trundle for themselves because well, Trundle's pretty freaking good into it, right? If you W in as Tom Kench and you're like, it's okay, I won't die, but there's a Trundle there, well, you might actually die. So I won't be surprised if it's banned, but I won't be surprised if it's let through if teams are running the Trundle. Specifically against TL because I think TL likes to run Trundle, right? Am I getting that wrong?
They like to run Trundle jungle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Well, I guess I didn't mean specific lane matchups. I
Well,
meant in the
me
jungle.
personally, I like Trundle top lane way more than I like Trundle jungle, mainly because I think uh, I don't know. I just think it's just such a good pick into tanks, and putting it in a top lane as opposed to jungle kind of gives you a little bit more freedom to go for a more damage-oriented split push build because when you play Trundle jungle, like I do think that Divine Sunder has made Trundle actually a really good champion. I honestly think he's sleeper OP. I'm little bit surprised that we haven't seen more Tom Kench because more Trundle because it does match up very well into tanks like Tom Kench,
Yeah.
but it
Yep.
also does very, very well into these bruisery type champions. Like Viego, because it actually has a really great matchup into Viego because you steal AD with the Q, and then you steal stats with the ulti, and it's kind of just like a stat check champion. Like where you can actually win out that matchup from even or ahead, and you can kind of like farm AFK and split push if you're behind. So I'm actually really surprised we haven't been seeing more Trundle because I feel like in top lane it's super super good when you're able to go like um, Divine Sunder and Bork into these tank matchups, or if you're up against these more bruiser styles, you can go the Sunder into a tank item, or Sunder into Sterak's, or Sunder into Titanic, and then go full tank. I just think this champion is like sleeper OP, and should Tom Kench see a lot more priority, I would expect teams to pick up Trundle because I think it's a really good answer into it because you do need so many of these various like utility portions to deal with Tom Kench. Like you need heal cutting, you need like shield reduction, you need stat stealing. Even the AD taking against Tom Kench is good because he auto attacks you a lot. I just think this champion's sleeper OP.
Yeah. So I actually think I prefer it in the jungle. So I do think I do agree with you that it's OP. I prefer it in the jungle because I think it allows you to dive towers a little bit better. When you're stuck top lane, yes, you have TP, so you can TP for dives. But I think when you're jungle, you kind of have the ability to choose where you want that dive to be, and whenever, even whether it's a tank or not that you're diving, just ulting that champion that's stuck under tower. That's where I hold a lot of value with the Trundle there as well, and the pillar really helps dive as well. As far as mobility is concerned, so I like it more in the jungle, but to your point, like it's good in top as well. Honestly, it's just a pick that's really good right now, whether it be top or jungle. But yeah, anyways, I just prefer it a little bit more in the jungle. Anything else on the matchup specifically?
Um, yeah, I don't. What was I gonna say? I still think Stixon and Chime have actually been playing really well. I think Chime. I think he's kind of. He has been one tricking a little bit on Rel. But it's kind
Yeah.
of just a champion that fits his play style. But I would be a little bit concerned should teams decide to ban away from that, or even to just go for like an Aphelios Thresh type situation. Because if you're playing like Rel and another like aggressive AD carry, something like a Kaisa or like I don't know, maybe something like a Draven, for example, like it's the onus is on you to go out and win the lane. And if another team is going to play like Aphelios Thresh or Varus Thresh, basically any Varus or Aphelios bot lane combination, it's going to be really hard for you to actually like get advantages in that lane, and then you're just going to be like a useless rel in 20-30 minutes where you really have two buttons and then die.
So I'm glad you brought that up because I almost forgot to. Foreshadowing, I was going to bring it up in a little bit, but anyways, his rel was not good this past week. Whereas I was giving him praise for it 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was really fucking bad this past week, or maybe the past 2 weeks. I don't remember exactly. I don't know what the hell happened. He just seems so uncomfortable on the champion all of a sudden, whereas he looked so comfortable on it before. Like he had so many nice engages when they were picking up wins, and it seems like he's just absolutely trolling on it in these losses. It feels like he has no idea when he can engage and get follow up from his team versus not. So it's really night and day. I thought he was such a good rel player, and I was like, you can't give him rel, and then he got rel this weekend, and he looked like crap. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe you should give him rel. Maybe you should leave it open and not ban it. I don't know. Really, really night and day, and really, really weird.
Yeah.
Oh, also Licorice too, by the way, just another thing to bring up. Licorice in that matchup versus the GP against
Oh yeah, he got
Alfari,
solo bullet hard.
that was so troll, man. Like, what was that pathing? Okay, even if you're going to do that, I think you have to all in and
Yeah, dude,
like
that was the problem. He didn't fight to the death. He
it's
like
like he got a yeah, exactly. You proc his conqueror and then stopped fighting. It's like,
yeah,
well, that's
like
not the time to stop fighting. That was weird, man.
dude, like people were like, even the casters were watching that trade and were like, oh my god, this guy's absolutely fisting. It's like, dude, like he's a Wukong with full stack passive and full conquer. Like you win the 1v1 to the death right here. And like he literally procced conquer, and the instant he did so, he just backed off and then took a Q,
Yeah.
walked back up to the wave, and then got flash auto queued. And it was like, man, like you just got to win that and commit your flash when your E comes back up off cooldown when you have conquer and passive fully stacked up. Yeah,
That
that
was
was a
like
bit.
the only bad way to play that, right? Like he could
Yeah.
have just not gone through river and gone through lane if he wanted to play it safe, or if you're gonna all in, all in. You can't all
Mhm.
in proc your conqueror and then be like, nah, never mind.
Dude,
No,
yeah.
that's the only bad way you could play that.
Dude,
That was weird.
that's like the Wukong special is like you level one fight to the death if possible
Yeah.
because you're just so strong with Conquer and the
You have a
passive.
gap closer. Yeah, you have a
Exactly.
gap
You have
closer.
an
Yeah.
attack speed boost, you have healing damage with Conqueror, and you have extra armor from your passive. It's like the perfect level one all in. And I think people can also argue that Gangplank's a really strong all in level one champion, but with Conqueror versus Grasp, Conqueror will always win out in that extended trade.
Yeah.
Whereas you kind of saw in that lane like once he got chunked, Alfari just played range and Grasp queued him on cooldown, and then once he got low enough, flash queued.
I think Alfari started that trade and probably mid trade was like, uh-oh. And then Licorice backed off and he was like, oh, okay, never mind. This
Yeah.
is easy. And yeah, I think that's part of the reason why. Was it after that game that he had the interview?
Yeah.
That's where he's probably head scratching, being like, I don't know if these guys are just bad. Like, I don't know what that was. He's probably thinking specifically about that level one because he's like, there's no way I got away with that, right? But anyway.
All right. Well, last up, we still have a bit of FlyQuest on here, but we're mainly going to be talking about CLG. Unfortunately for CLG, they're the furthest away in terms of actually being able to make playoffs. They're at 11 wins, 2 back from FlyQuest. So we kind of do have their most important matchup as that game against FlyQuest because while it's still a very uphill battle for CLG, because Golden Guardians and FlyQuest have to play each other, like one of those teams is guaranteed to pick up a win. CLG, I think in all likelihood, really has to get lucky and go 2-1 and have the other teams lose out minus that one game, or go 3-0, kind of, have they still have, some favors that have to happen to them. But their
Yeah, they're
FlyQuest
0-4
matches,
versus FlyQuest this year,
yeah,
so
I was
a
about to
tie
say
is not
that.
good enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
They're
don't
three
know.
and two against Golden Guardians.
I guess,
Hooray!
but I think like yeah, I know, like the two of the wins, those are from like Spring Split, if I remember correctly.
So that means they have to 3-0.
In all
Because if they
likelihood,
pick
they
up
have
two
to.
wins, if they pick up 2 wins, they're tied with FlyQuest, but they're 0-4 against FlyQuest. You have to 3-0 this weekend if you're CLG. You have to 3-0.
Well, there you go. All their matches are important then.
And they play against Dignitas, they play against TSM, and they play against FlyQuest, which is the marquee matchup here because you need FlyQuest to also lose and for you to win. So that's why this is the most important matchup. But I mean, they're all pretty important for
Yeah,
CLG.
I mean,
You have to win.
I don't think it's gonna happen. Man, that game against 100
Wouldn't that be
Thieves.
amazing? How
No, it's
counter
not gonna
logic would
happen.
that be?
I mean, it would be. It's just not gonna happen though. That game against
I am
100
not
Thieves
letting go
was
of
sad.
faith. Yeah, dude, is that the one where the Rise TP out,
Yeah.
or not the TP, the ulti out of the pit?
Dude, they just left them behind. Like, what? Why did they do that?
Did that not sum up CLG like this year? Like just never on the same page. Some of them are ulting out of the pit, some of them are staying in the pit to fight, and then you just have 2 guys that go out and 3 guys stick around, and they could have won that fight if the 2 guys stuck around, or they could have just all gotten out. Like again, similar to the licorice thing, that was the only way that could have gone wrong. If you all fight, you probably win. Although you don't need to fight because you just got Baron, so get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Either way, like just having some people commit and some not was the only way you lose that fight and ultimately the game, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
Rough. And now you have to 3-0.
Sad for CLG.
Yeah, and so what we got them against Fly as their marquee matchup. Now, okay, I think Kumo's been kind of useless, honestly. So there you go, Finn. You got a little bit of a time to chill and relax and maybe make up for all the running it down that he's done all split long. Maybe Finn will pick up some solo bolos. Maybe not. What else can we look forward to for CLG? Roxa looks good sometimes.
Yeah, he's like one of their better players for sure. His Twitter is still sad.
Yeah. Dude, how weird is it? Like it's funny and sad and honestly strange that like Doublelift, he pretends that he is sad about Brox's tweets. Like after every game, we know Brox is going to tweet, and Doublelift's sitting there going, like, "Oh man, it's too bad." But the reality is, he loves it. He can't wait to see Brox's sad tweets afterwards. And Medios is always making fun of him for it, always giving him a little jab. Like he's always saying, "Okay, game's over. CLG lost." And Medios is like, Doublelift, you gotta go grab your box of tissues and wait for the Broxon tweet to come out.
It's like the situation where whenever TSM loses, you're just waiting for the TSM Legends episode to come out.
It's really funny. Like, anyways, it's funny to me that Doublelift absolutely loves it, and Medios gives him like Medios makes fun of him every single time. Their co-stream is absolutely amazing. If you guys haven't checked it out, by the way, it's so funny. But anyways, yeah, it's sad seeing their tweets. The other thing I'll say too is that like Demonte was kind of popping off on the Aurelia. That was a weird game to me because I thought that his Aurelia looked really bad, but then he was like 3-0 at one point, and I was like, how is he picking up these kills and how is he not dying? His Aurelia looked awful. Like he started E to get the pick level 1, and like now your laning phase is just absolutely crap, and then he couldn't land any of his stuns. It was actually really bad, but he had a good scoreline. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, Jizuke, you're talking about the game against EG, right?
Probably. I don't remember which game it was. I just remember Demonte's Aurelia was looking good, but
I just remember
Jizuke
rolling that whole game with Rise. Like he was doing so much damage. I honestly,
oh yeah, true.
Yeah, dude, I honestly like way prefer the Luden's Rise over the Everfrost Rise. Like I think Everfrost is a good item to build on Rise, especially if the team is like kind of low mobility melee type champions. But I think dude, the Luden's just does so much damage because you get like
it depends.
You get more HP, you get more mana, and the main thing that you get is like you get the spell pen on the mythic passive. I think Luden's is like way fucking more high DPS.
That damage was disgusting. Honestly.
He was like blowing 3 people up at the same time in those late game team fights.
Yeah, and then Broxa didn't give him the penta, scumbag Broxa.
Yeah, dude, although you gotta give
I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm not gonna lie. If that's me, I ain't giving them. You're CLG, man. You know everyone's gonna shit on. Like, no. You don't need any more reason for people to shit on you. Although I guess
true.
you get shit on for not giving the penta as well.
It's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, you're CLG. You're doomed if you do, doomed if you don't. But yeah, anyways, still not a lot of great things for CLG. I would absolutely love if they somehow 3-0'd. That would be, to me, one of the best outcomes of the weekend, just because, God, they need something. I'm really pulling for those guys. Although this will be my last week of having to cheer for CLG.
I
My commitment.
wouldn't. I honestly don't want them to win just due to the fact that I think they'll get absolutely clapped in playoffs, whereas I think Golden Guardians actually has somewhat of a chance.
That's okay. That's fair. But I mean, I've committed to CLG, so I will be pulling for them. But that's besides the point. Anyway.
Yeah, okay. Well, we got a pop-off bean soup up next. It was honestly kind of hard for me to pick a pop-off bean soup because
I got one.
Okay, you can go first then.
Yeah, I figure I'll give you some time to think
Well,
about
I
this.
know who I'm gonna pick. I just was gonna outline
Oh,
my
okay.
reasonings. But go ahead.
Okay. I gave it to Racist Draven because I think he deserves it, and I doubted him a lot. And so sometimes you just got to own it, when like you're just really wrong about something. Now, I didn't say it on podcast that like I thought his Draven was just going to feed when he was ahead. We weren't live, right? But I feel like I need to be fair and admit how I was thinking during that game. And yeah, he was part of they were winning everywhere, I believe. I think it was like it wasn't like a 1v9 performance. But still, I feel like I was doing him wrong, whereas he actually still looked really good on the pick. So I gave him pop off because he was popping off on the Draven. It's that simple.
I myself did go with an Immortals player as well, but I did kind of look outside of the normal picks because we've been talking a lot about Insanity and how he hasn't really been playing super well and has been pretty low impact for most of the split, but I think he had a really great weekend. While I do think that the focus was on Raze and Destiny, and for good reason, because I think their Draven lanes were actually playing very well. I also thought Insanity was playing really well this weekend. Like this is the Insanity that I like to see. Insanity got the juice. This is like the Immortals that I kind of hope shows up in playoffs, one that actually like can beat these top teams and has a chance. Because they
Yeah,
just beat 100 Thieves, like it's clear, like they can do it. We're still
in
like
that
we're
specific
at the
game,
same thing with Immortals, where like, well, they can lose to the bottom teams, but they can still beat the top teams. Like
yeah.
same situation.
And in that specific game, you could literally give it to anyone, honestly. The pop off, they were all pretty much just destroying 100 Thieves. Like you could give it to Closer and his Diana. We talked about Revenge's Tom Kench and how he just couldn't do anything to him. Although you could also argue that that's just the champion being busted. But then there's Destiny, who had a good Nautilus game, and like I said, the Draven I went with. So yeah, you could give it to anyone there, and I don't think that. I think Insanity was absolutely popping off on the Lucian as well, so it is warranted, as per usual.
Bean soup. I went with NXI.
Yeah.
I thought him and Triple looked really good when they did have that first like 4-game win streak.
They did look
And
good, and then they just don't now.
I think both of them have kind of done a 180 NXI more than Triple, but I don't think Triple has been playing particularly well either. I think he did have in their 5-game loss streak, he did have one pretty good LeBlanc game that they still lost the game, but I remember his LeBlanc in one of those losses was pretty good. But I just think NXI has been bad.
So
He's bad.
you did the wrong bean soup. Your bean soup is wrong, JNT. Do you know why? Do you remember why?
No.
Because you said you called it at the start of the week. You said you wanted to give bean soup somewhere else.
Oh yeah. Oh, it was the
The
broadcast
spectators.
because
Yeah.
I forgot. I actually completely forgot. I said this on Friday.
I wrote it down for you. I wrote it down for you.
It was
I wouldn't let you forget.
it was during the Cloud9 versus 100 Thieves game, and there was just like I've been knocking the like actual spectators of the else, like the one who is controlling the spectator client. I've been knocking them for quite a long time now, in both in spring and summer, for just like randomly missing a lot of plays that are happening around the map, or just randomly panning elsewhere during like the middle of a skirmish. And in this game, there was like 3 separate instances where they started up a replay right before a fight was about to happen. They ended a replay while a fight was already going on, or that we missed something on one side of the map because the spectator is just like doing the AFK switching. Like I just imagine like when that game was going on, they had it as like in the spectator client where you can click the setting where it's just like randomly, like I don't know what it's called exactly, but like you don't lock on to a specific player, but it just will randomly change however the game feels it needs to change. And I was like, that's what it felt like that
It
game.
like automatically pans somewhere else randomly.
Like there was nobody actually controlling it. They were just letting the spectator client do its thing. And I was like, dude, like what the hell is this? But I forgot about that. Yes, thank you.
I would not let you forget about it because it was bad, man.
Yeah.
It was really bad. JNT
But
saw that this
NXI
weekend,
was also
guys.
bad, man.
Well, you gotta pick one, and I think you're going with the bad camera crew.
I picked both.
No, pick one.
Both.
All right. Anyways, yeah, I wouldn't let you forget about it because it was really bad. It was way worse this weekend than it has been in the past. The thing is, when they're going remote, I thought this would be their time because you know how like in the LEC you can tell that like they're already ahead because of like all the integrity or whatever. Like when the LEC was not when they were playing remote, you could tell the spectators have already seen what's happened and they're ready to pan to a play. You see it in the LCK as well. Honestly, I don't know. I think there's some sort of delay. Whereas like the spectators are already they zoom in when a play is about to happen. You're like, oh, I guess something's about to happen. I thought with them going remote and them having a 5-minute time, whatever that they have to do for integrity reasons, I thought that the spectators would be better, and it just wasn't. I was like, well, that would be the benefit of going back remote. There was no benefit, and it was awful. And it was like you would always miss the replays were really bad timed. You would always miss a bunch of plays. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. My bean soup. Okay. There's two of them that I wrote them both down. I couldn't decide which one should I go with. JNT. It's either
The second
Licorice,
one.
that Wukong play, or Chimes Rel.
Second one, I said it before.
Yeah. It was really, really, really bad Chimes Rel. So let's go with that. It was good before, and it was all of a sudden really bad. I don't know. Like I mentioned before, like it looked like he was so comfortable on this champ like a month ago, and then the last 2 weeks, no. Like especially this past week, he looked so bad and was just absolutely running it down. He's trying to flank where like he's running over a pink ward. Like you know you're spotted, and you're trying to solo flank when your team is a mile away. There's never anyone going to be able to follow up. It was bean soup. So bean soup, bean soup, bean soup to that.
Okay, I had to do some on-the-fly editing because I got griefed by OBS, but I'll pull up the. We were gonna get into our predictions for the last week of LCS. Do a bit of on-the-fly editing, but here we go. Blue Jay actually did catch up 1 win on me because Cloud9 let me down against TSM on the Sunday match. These are the previous matches. What is this? Okay, I'm actually getting hard griefed.
I can't see your screen right now, so I don't know what's happening. Normally, we do this show live, and I could see the stream, and I know what's happening for this week and the next few weeks. I don't even know what's going on over there, so I have the matchups here if you want me
Yeah,
to go with that.
you're gonna have to go through it individually. My thing got
Okay,
reset.
so game 1 is 100 Thieves versus TSM on Friday. First of all, by the way, we mentioned before how like there's all the marquee matchups. Literally every single game on Friday is one of those marquee matchups for one of the teams that we went through. So that's something of note. But anyways, game 1, 100 Thieves versus TSM. Yeah, this one's huge because this one's probably going to decide for seed, like we mentioned. I don't know where to go for with this one. I literally don't know who to pick.
I am gonna pick TSM. Mainly because kind of my reasonings that I went with when we were talking about this game in the segment was I just think that 100 Thieves hasn't been looking as good previously, specifically their early games, because I think their laning has been a little bit weaker. I think Someday was playing pretty well, kind of in the middle of the split, but has fallen off a little bit. And Abadage has fallen off a little bit since the start of the split. And FBI and Huhi have fallen off a little bit since the start of the split. But I still think Closer has been really, really good. He's the only guy that I would say has consistently been good for the majority of the split. And on the TSM side, I just think their players are getting better. And I think it's just kind of a matter of how the teams are looking right now. And right now, I prefer TSM.
Yeah, I think I do too. This one is really tough, but I think I'm going to go TSM as well, just because they're looking better, like you mentioned. God, this one's close though. But
Yeah,
yeah, I'll
honestly,
stick TSM.
it feels like if 100 Thieves is going to win this game, it's going to be like a 25-minute smash. But if TSM wins, it's going to be like a 37, 38-minute type game.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, okay, TSM for me. Next up is Evil Geniuses versus Cloud9, another one that's really, really close, and of course a marquee matchup, one that really matters a lot. Oh Jesus, man! Here's my thing. Like C9's starting to ramp up, quote unquote. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, they are looking better, but it's like they've had like 7 bad weeks. They have 1 good week, and like now I'm just like, yeah, here you go. It's like, can I really give them that much faith as that? Like they haven't looked that consistent for that long, whereas EG has almost the whole split. So I struggle with this one, but I'm still thinking C9.
Me too. I kind of gave my reasoning in the segment as well, just mainly because I think I prefer Cloud9 everywhere except the mid lane. Because I just think due to the volatility of it, like I would just have to give the edge to Jizuke because he's just been playing better. Like even though I do think Perks is the better player and could easily come out on top of the matchup, like you can't say that Perks has been a better player than Jizuke this split. Like you just can't. It's not true.
Yeah.
But Perks definitely has a potential. and I do prefer Cloud9 everywhere else, and that's why I would go with Cloud9. And part of my other reasoning was, should something actually go wrong in this game, Cloud9's not going to make the mistake they've been making earlier on in the split, where they lose one fight and then they just proceed to take another fight 4 or 5 minutes later, and then put their 1K to 2K gold lead like 3 to 5K. Like, they actually have patience now, which is good because they're always
They
so
stopped
horny to
flipping
fight.
games
Yeah,
at Scuttle as well.
that too.
The other thing that I'll mention about it is like this is the first week where I think pressure starts to get high, and I wonder how that's gonna. I don't know if Danny's gonna be nervous or not. It's just something else that's in the back of my mind that like there's a bunch of vets on C9 that I know handle high pressure situations. I mean, like Perks has been in a freaking World Finals. Like, tell me that's not where pressure, where pressure happens. So there's that to consider as well. So that's another little bit of edge that I give to Cloud9, even though it's a really small one.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is FlyQuest versus Golden Guardians. I think we're both going Golden Guardians on this one.
Yep.
Both teams have looked pretty weak, but I don't think Golden Guardians has looked as weak. Pretty sure again you're going to follow me in that same sentiment. Yeah, this is a really interesting one because this game, like we said, is a marquee matchup. It's probably going to be one that decides who's moving on and getting the 8th seed to make playoffs. But yeah, anyways, Golden Guardians I think is just a little bit better right now.
You have to read them off, remember?
Say I agree, and I pick
Oh, I
Golden
did.
Guardians.
I pick Golden
Okay, I didn't hear
Guardians.
that. Sorry,
I
my
agree.
mistake. Okay. Next game is Team Liquid versus Immortals. I'm gonna go Team Liquid on this one. I think that they are the favorites in this one. Really, like, if you would have asked me a week ago, I would have said easy TL. But I am nervous that everyone knows that they're gonna play around top, like I mentioned, and Immortals did pick up the 3-0, and they're starting to look a little bit better. But I still got to go TL. I think they're just a better team. And if you go with the pressure argument again, I think that goes back to the side. The side is on the advantage is on the side of Team Liquid.
Yeah, I think if the top gap wasn't as large as it is, I think there's a completely fair argument for wanting to pick Immortals over Team Liquid, and I think I might. But Afar is just too good, and Revenge is not good. So
Okay.
I honestly think this game will be won or lost through top lane, and I think it's on Immortals to match on the opposite side of the map in bot lane. And if they can't do that, then they don't have a chance.
Okay, so we both got Team Liquid there. Next up, it's Dignitas versus CLG. Do I dare go CLG?
You can, I'm not. I take Dig.
I gotta take them at one point. It's the last week, you know?
You gotta do it now then.
No, I think I'll save it for the last game of the week. I'm gonna go Dignitas on this one. Yeah, they're just a better team.
Yeah.
Although Counter Logic would say that CLG finds a way to 3-0 this weekend.
Nope.
Don't think a lot of people have the faith in that though. Okay, the first game. So we've each got Dignitas there. The first game on Saturday is 100 Thieves versus Golden Guardians. JNT?
Golden Guardians didn't win the wait. Who won the last matchup? Golden Guardians beat them last time, right? They did. Yes, they did. That was the first game with Licorice. I'm still gonna take.
And that was a game where Chime looked really good on the rel. He had a really good around the bot side red buff.
Yeah.
He had a really good rel engage there, and I think they had a 4-man Volibear land on them, and so on and so forth.
I'm still gonna roll with 100 Thieves. I think yeah.
Me too. Me too. It wouldn't surprise me if 100 Thieves really collapsed this weekend. Wouldn't that be insane if they have an 0-3 weekend? They're playing TSM, Golden Guardians, and then EG. Like, Golden Guardians would be the one that's, like, out there.
And they dropped to 3rd seed?
Maybe.
Because if they 0-3...
Yeah, they would, because either EG or C9 would automatically get a win since they play each other.
They can pass them.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyways, I'm not betting on it, but it would be interesting. I'm going to go 100 Thieves, though.
Okay.
Cloud9, Dignitas is the next game. Yeah, Dignitas is looking better lately, but so is C9, and I think C9 is just a step above, even a couple steps above, honestly.
Pretty sure C9 versus Dignitas is the only head-to-head series where Cloud9 has a perfect record against them. Pretty sure they drop games to every other team except for Dignitas.
That is correct. Yes, that is true. So, they are 4-0.
Yeah, they always seem to have Dig's number, and I think part of it is because Dignitas's solo laners are just so terrible right now. And yeah, I think that's my main reasoning for that.
Yeah, I mean, they're struggling in a lot of places, so it makes sense. Yeah, both of us are going Cloud9 there. Then it's Immortals versus FlyQuest.
MT,
yeah, I'm
baby.
going Immortals. Yeah, I'm going Immortals as well. FlyQuest is just The hype around the Academy squad has definitely fallen off. I think Kumo is one of the worst players in the league, honestly. You could put him there with Finn. Maybe Finn's a little bit worse because he's just running it
still
down.
top that list.
Okay, and then maybe Kumo after that. Anyways, I just think Kumo's kind of useless. He's kind of AFK, honestly. So yeah, that's just. I mean, it's hard to put the whole thing just on Kumo because the bot lane looked bad. Their draft. What game was it? Maybe it was against Dignitas. Yeah, it was against Dignitas, where they draft Tom Kench support with Kog'Maw into Draven Leona. Like the Kog'Maw, first of all, Tom Kench can't devour like he used to. It's an ultimate, so you have to wait until 6, and you can only do it once every like 2 minutes or whatever the cooldown is. I don't even know, but Draven Leona is gonna hop on that Kog'Maw and absolutely destroy him. Anyways, that's just really bad drafting. So I'm afraid of FlyQuest drafting as well to add to it. Anyways, Immortals for me. TSM CLG is next.
TSM.
Oh boy, CLG, if you're gonna get that 3-0, you gotta beat the first place team. Yeah, okay, TSM. It's not CLG. Next is Team Liquid versus EG. This should be a good game. So one of the marquee matchups for Team Liquid, as we gave them 2. I'm gonna go EG on this one. I think that they're just better than TL. I mentioned 14 times this episode that I think it's very, very linear and obvious the way that Team Liquid's playing the game. I think CLG can, or pardon me, I think EG can defend that, and I think they will. So EG for.
I just trying to remember back to my argument that I was making in our segment about TL, and I just remember saying that I think
bot lane.
I think they're just better suited to beat EG than Cloud9 in those 2 matchups. So I think I'm actually gonna go Team Liquid on this one.
Okay, J&T's got Team Liquid. Okay, first game on Sunday is Dignitas versus TSM. Now I think Dignitas has a good record against TSM.
I think it's 2-2 or it's 3-1 in Dignitas's favor.
Dignitas is 3-1 against TSM this year, if that matters to you at all.
No, it doesn't.
To me, it does not.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it does not. So TSM over Dignitas for both of us. Immortals versus Golden Guardians. J&T, are you going to pick with your brain or your heart on this one, or are they both the same pick?
I would say my brain and my heart tell me to pick Immortals.
Okay. The thing is, you've been hyping up Golden Guardians a lot. I guess
I like
before
both of these teams.
Week,
I like both of these teams.
Yes, I know you do, but I know that you're more of an IMT over Golden Guardians guy. Are you not?
Yeah, but I mean, I've been on Golden Guardians side.
Past week.
Well, I would say I've been on the Golden Guardian side for like 3 weeks now. Probably almost 3 weeks.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna say. Before this week, I feel like your brain would have said Golden Guardians, but after this week, with the 0-3 of Golden Guardians and the 3-0 of so maybe I'm a little bit late with that reference.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Anyway, Immortals. Do I want to go to Immortals? I'll go Golden Guardians on this one. Let's go Golden Guardians. I still think that they got some. I can't say juice. That's an insanity thing. I don't know. They got something left in the tank. Anyways, so Golden Guardians for me, IMT for J&T, and then we got Team Liquid versus Cloud9. Very interesting matchup, J&T. I'm gonna go Cloud9.
Me too. I'm biased. I'm just honestly like that's the only reasoning.
I don't know how many times I could say the Team Liquid top matchup thing, so I won't say it again. Cloud9. Okay, 100 Thieves versus EG next. Another really good matchup. I'm gonna go Evil Geniuses.
Huh.
What is your choice?
What did you go? You went EG?
I went EG.
I'll go 100 Thieves just to be different.
I like it. You're giving me a shot at catching you.
I guess technically I am because I think that's 3 different that we have now. So you got a chance.
The thing is, J&T's a bit of a swapper, guys. Now I will admit I do
swap last
picks
week.
now and then.
Shut the fuck
J&T,
up.
yeah, I do, but you are a big swapper. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just saying the reason I bring that up is because I'm giving you credit now for allowing me a chance, but there's a chance that you don't give me a chance, is what I'm saying.
No, well here's the thing, because the ones that we had different, one of them's Cloud9. No, wait, no, what am I saying? What were the ones we had different?
About?
What were the picks that we had different? No, this week that we've just predicted. I had Immortals, you had Golden Guardians, that was one of them. You had EG, I have 100 Thieves. And there was one other one that we had different. whatever.
I took Golden Guardians over IMT. Taking EG over 100.
Whatever. My point is that normally I
Uh,
do flip-flop on teams that I kind of like have no clue what's gonna happen, or they just like have a really stinky performance.
yeah, and Friday, Saturday, if they look really bad, then you're flopping on Sunday, right?
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
honestly think that's kind of less of the case this time because, like you mentioned, there's a lot of difficult matchups on Friday. So, for example, like even if 100 Thieves or TSM or EG or Cloud9 didn't look very good in that first day, you got to give them like some of the benefit of the doubt because they're playing another top team. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that was I got EG, you got 100 Thieves. Is that where we're at now?
Yeah.
I'm not good at this. This is normally you thing. I'm losing track. Okay, last game, FlyQuest versus CLG. What am I taking, JNT?
CLG.
Fucking right I am. Let's go, CLG. The last game of the split. Can CLG pull off a win? I fucking hope they do. I'm taking CLG. You are taking FlyQuest, I
To be
presume?
honest, I don't really have any faith in FlyQuest either, so I'll take CLG for the meme.
Whoa!
I'll
Get out!
I'll
Get
take
out of
CLG for the
town!
meme.
Okay, all right. We both got CLG for the meme, the last game of the year. Hopefully CLG can pull up a win. Okay, what's next, JT? We got quick news now.
Yeah, just a little bit of quick news because I don't know, it's kind of dead right now. But the main talking point, I guess, this weekend was there was some COVID stuff going on with LCS. I think it was on Tuesday. It was announced that two of the Immortals players tested positive. Maybe it wasn't, or maybe it was on Friday. I don't remember. But two of the Immortals players tested positive. So Immortals was going to play remotely for the weekend, and then the LCS released a statement that another team member on an unnamed team, like meaning they didn't release the name of the team,
Yeah.
tested positive. So after Friday's games, the LCS went completely online for both Saturday and Sunday. Pretty seamless, I would say. It didn't feel as wonky as prior, but I think that was because everybody expected it, and it was kind of like a last minute thing that went on, so nobody was like too concerned about it. But the point is that they're still going to try to get the players and the teams and the whole broadcast going basically the same for week 9. So we'll have to see what's all that about. Yeah.
Yeah, we say seamless, but then there was like the bean soup about like the spectator
But that was
stuff
like
for
in
the
that was like while they were in the broadcast on Friday.
was it in
Yeah,
studio?
that was
Okay.
on Friday.
Anyways, so what's the deal? I don't know if you know what the latest is on it. Did they announce if they're going remote next week as well?
No, they didn't announce that, but when the announcement came out that they were going online on Saturday, in that statement, they said we're going to try to do our best to get
Yeah.
back in studio for week 9, and then same for
Yeah.
playoffs and everything.
So it's a to be determined kind of thing, and we'll have to wait and see what happens next week. Maybe as we're doing this episode, they've already announced it. So I
Yeah.
know they like to do that on us and announce things when we're recording the episode.
Yeah.
But we'll probably see it later in the week because why would you announce on Monday? You know, there could be a breakout a case on Wednesday or Thursday or something.
Yeah.
So my guess is they'll wait until Thursday or maybe Friday, but probably Thursday night to decide to release where they're doing that. But
Yeah.
anyways, what's next?
The other thing to note with that is Travis Gafford was kind of
Oh,
inquiring about what teams have their players have been like fully vaccinated or whatnot, and
mhm.
the LCSPA released a statement saying that 95% of all LCS and Academy players are fully vaccinated. So with that in
I
mind,
think it was 95 plus, actually. I think it was above
yeah, it was
95.
like a greater than
Yeah.
symbol followed by the 95%. Um, yeah, so based on that, I would say that most likely, should there be any problems in week 9, we'll probably get back into studio for playoffs because recovery time will be a lot quicker and it should be a lot easier
Yeah.
because most of the players are vaccinated. So yeah,
So that's kind of cool. Now, with that, there was also some draft issues because they were playing
yeah,
online. I guess Immortals had, I believe it was Insanity that disconnected for like 10 seconds during Champ Select, and it randomly locked in Kane for Xerxes. It could have locked in any champion, guys. And if you go back and watch the Champ Select, you see the clock hit 0 on Champ Select. And so it just locks in a champion for you. It locked in Kane, and they end up winning that game
yeah.
against EG. Isn't that
It,
amazing?
yeah, it was pretty funny. And then like Peter Dunn had also tweeted out something like saying that they wanted was it like they wanted a Rise pick or a Rise ban or something earlier on in that draft, and that didn't
Yeah.
get communicated, and like basically it was kind of like funny to hear about that because they were basically saying like, oh, online sucks, and you kind of wonder if there have been any of these errors previously, and like, been when the broadcast went remote in season 10, or like,
Yeah.
early season 11. Like, it's
Yeah, because the Rise ended up getting picked and then kind of 1v9 the game, didn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, I think the Kane pick, don't quote me on this, but I think the Kane pick was supposed to be Rise. So I think
Yeah.
they were supposed to have Rise anyways.
Mhm.
It was a mess anyways. Just something that was really, really interesting. Next.
Next up, a bit of a throwback. Former LPL legend Clear Love played an LPL this weekend in EDG's series against WE. He only played one game. I believe he played Sejuani, inted, and they lost the series 0-2.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he inted, but I think he was like 2-7-2, and I didn't watch the game obviously, but I would assume based on that
Yeah.
scoreline, you probably didn't have the greatest game.
Yeah.
But I
I
think,
mean, like I said, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say I don't know the whole situation, but if my memory serves me correct, he was on like military leave, and I
Mhm.
don't think was planning to come back and play professionally, or at least not right away like this, where he kind of just like got put in for one game, kind of for fun, and then got subbed out the next game. And EDG is like a
Yeah.
top team, so I think they were like, it was kind of a bit like of a fan service type thing.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not
He's just a guy
mistaken,
that's
EDG's either 1 or 2 in LPL standings right now.
let me tell you.
Pretty sure they're 1.
They are. Yep, they're tied for first with Fun plus Phoenix.
Okay,
So
well there you go.
EDG is 10-3, Fun plus Phoenix 10-3. But yeah, he's been a guy that's been around for a long, long time. One of the League of Legends, if that's a weird way to say it, but
Nice.
anyways, it is the case. Other news is General Sniper, the 14-year-old phenom, we'll call him, hit rank 1 in NA. Now this, if you guys don't know who it is, it's Viper's younger brother. He's only 14 years old, so he is too young to be signed to any team. He might be 15 soon.
I think
I
he's
don't know.
15
He's really, really
now.
young. He's really, really young. And so a lot of teams want to sign him, but he's actually too young to be signed. For those that don't remember, Cloud9 tried signing him to like just a content creator contract or something like that.
Well, they wanted to sign him as a content creator in an attempt to like loophole their way into using him for an amateur event.
Right.
But
Yes.
since he's that young, he's not eligible for amateur events because I believe you have to be 16 to play in amateur events, but you can be, however, I don't think there's an age restriction on signing as a content creator. If there is,
Tisk
maybe it's like
tisk.
13. I don't know. But there was a
Cloud9 always trying to bend the rules, always trying to look for loopholes,
hey
trying
that
to get
if
away with stuff.
hey
Just like when they were giving equity to Sneaky and Jensen, and now they're trying to sign General Sniper. They never get away with it, though, do they?
what's the
They never
saying?
do.
If
Nice
you ain't
try,
cheating,
Jack.
you ain't trying.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Is there anything else on quick news? I feel like there was something that we were going to add, but we forgot. Is that it?
No, we were
Was
gonna
that the
add.
thing that we added?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay,
it.
great. Okay, so that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for sticking with us. We apologize again for not having a live show. Yeah, we're kind of working last minute adjustments because JNT is moving around a lot on Sundays, and so pretty much I'm gonna say it again, every week we don't know what his internet situation is gonna be like. We don't know if we're doing a live stream, if we're not doing. It's probably not, but we'll continue to try to update you guys if anything changes. I sent out a tweet tonight just letting people know that I'm not going to send out a tweet every week saying that there's no live episode. If things change and there is a live episode, I'll probably send one out. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. We got one more week, guys. One more week of the LCS. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, things are really interesting. Everyone has games that matter. And so definitely encourage people to tune in. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Remember to subscribe. We need subscribers. We are available again on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. JNT, am I missing any shoutouts?
No.
JNT, am I missing any shoutouts?
No, you're not.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much. This has been episode 52 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. We will see you guys next week.